morning, everyone, and welcome. Is this on? And thank you for being here this morning. Thank you especially Trinidad State Junior College for allowing us to use your venue today. My name is Lopez. I'm Los Animas County Commissioner. We want to thank you all for attending our legislative roundtable today. On behalf of Los Animas County Board of County Commissioners, Commissioner Tony Haas, Commissioner Felix Lopez, myself, and all of Los Animas County elected officials, the City of Trinidad City Council, elected officials, and our Mayor Rico, we all welcome you to today's discussions. I'd like to say a special thank you to our Acting City Manager Mike Valentine and our County Administrator Phil Dorenkamp for organizing and helping this, and a very special thank you to Victor Gutierrez for all the efforts you guys put in behind. At this time, would you please welcome Pastor Andrea Doeden.
Good morning. I come from the Judeo-Christian tradition like many of you, and if you look at our Holy Scriptures, people have always claimed God to be present and active in government and in communities, and so it is an honor to join you this morning and offer the invocation. Before I do that, however, I ask you to just pause for a moment. Most of you have heard that Representative Lewis died of breast cancer on Friday. So before we give our invocation, I would ask that you just pause for a moment of silence and remembrance of her, and then as surrounding her family as well. So let us just pause for a moment. Good and gracious God, we give you thanks this morning for the gift of community, for the gift of one another, for our families and our friends, for this location, and for the work that we have gathered here today to do. Lord, we claim your presence not only in our personal lives, but in our communal lives. And so we thank you that you are working through each and every one present here today. For all those who gather, we give thanks. We thank you that we will honor your presence not only here but in each other, and how we work together shows our respect for each other as well as for you, Lord. So for our discussions today, for our work, we thank you for your presence and guidance. Be with us this day and every day. We also ask a special blessing, not only upon those gathered, but upon the Lewis family, as they mourn the death of their family member, their mother, their grandmother, but as we join them in mourning her passing. We give you her presence will be missed, but we thank you for the many years of service that she offered so many people. Be with us now as we gather to do your work. We ask this in your name. Amen. Amen. Please be seated.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm going to ask you all to stand again. Your Honor, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And again, thank you all for being here. I'd like to introduce all of our participants who are here today with us. I don't think Dwight's made it here yet, Senator Bennett's office yet. We have Kathy Garcia from Senator Cory Gardner's office with us. Mr. Donald Beckwith from Congressman Ken Buck's office. We have the aforementioned Commissioner Tony Hass, Commissioner Felix Lopez. I'm not sure if our Los Angeles County elected officials are here, but I'd like to recognize Jody Amato, our County Assessor, Donna Leonetti, our Treasurer, Peach V. Hill, our Clerk, Mr. Junie Berker, our Coroner, and Mr. Gary Terry, our County Surveyor. I'd also like to thank and recognize the Mayor of Trinidad and the City Council, Mayor Phil Rico, Mayor Pro Tem Anthony Matei, Council members Joe Bonato, Rusty Goodall, Karen Grego, Carlos Lopez, Michelle Miles. We'd also like to recognize City Council's elect to be in the future here, now of 2020, is Aaron Ogletree, Mr. Frank Hsu, Mr. Aaron Williamson. I'd also like to welcome Ms. Tara Marshall from the Department of Local Affairs for being here. So thank you all for being here. For today's roundtable, we'll be introducing 11 or so individuals to come forward and speak about specific topics of interest in our community. These important topics include the opiate crisis, the substance abuse disorders, our recent developments concerning our Fisher's Peak, Space to Create, and the homeless issues. For sake of time, each individual will be asked to limit their comments to 10 minutes. Once each of the 11 panelists have had an opportunity to come forward and make their presentation, we will invite the city and the county and each state and federal official an opportunity to speak about any specific issue or concerns from their perspective. Finally, if time permits, we will take a few questions at the end of the roundtable. We invite anyone in the audience to submit a question for our panel. The questions must be submitted in written form. You will see the submittal form on your table. Please fill it out and pass it to the staff in the back of the room. You can just raise your hand and they'll come get it from you. Alright, at this time, I'd like to welcome Trinidad State Junior College President, Dr. Rhonda Epper.
Good morning. I'd like to begin by adding my condolences for Representative Animas. My staff and I were just talking about her this morning during our leadership meeting and reflecting on her service in our community and the fact that she was a TSJC alum and such a great supporter always for the college and our students. So with that in mind, today especially, I want to welcome you to Trinidad State Junior College. We are really happy to host this event, and I'm honored to be invited to share with you a little bit about our current initiatives that we have going on here at the college. During my short time here, I've been here about 6 months now, I've been impressed by how quickly this community can come together around your priorities and express the priorities that you hope to see from your local community college. I haven't needed to go out and do surveys or focus groups, which is, that was my experience at my previous institution, because you're all right here. And I see you at Rotary and at Chamber Luncheon, at Farmers Market. You're not shy about you'll march right into my office and suggest things. Have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about doing that? But I think that's great because it has helped me to bring the college and the community needs into greater focus so that we can do what we do best, which is to strengthen our economy through workforce development and strengthen families by giving students a chance to be self-sufficient. I don't think there's any better path out of poverty or any engine of economic development and social mobility than we have in our educational institutions. So I'm really pleased to be presenting today along with Dr. Aaron about some of the education initiatives we have going on here in Trinidad. Couple of new developments this fall that have given us some reasons to be optimistic, some maybe new energy and momentum. Our enrollment is up by 3.9%. That's the first time we've been up in about 6 years. So we're excited about that. We don't want to be overly optimistic, but cautiously optimistic that our enrollment is beginning to stabilize. We also were named as one of the eligible institutions in the Aspen Institute's College Excellence Prize program. They selected 150 institutions out of about 1,100 nationally to compete for this award. It is probably the most coveted award in the community college world, and it's based on our strong retention, our strong graduation rates, and it's not the first time we've been recognized. We've been recognized, I think, 3 or 4 times previously. So this is not something new that I have put into place. This is based on the long-standing commitment of our faculty and staff and our philosophy of putting students first. So we're really proud of that recognition. Since I've been here, we have been looking closely at how we can bring up some new programs that are responsive to the needs that I have heard from all of you, and expand existing programs where there is demand and where we can meet a need. So I'm just going to talk about a few of the programs that we're working on. We have this year been able to expand our nursing program significantly by about 30 students. So that's 30 new nurses that are going to be trained and out in our community over the next couple of years. We also are going to be launching a Bachelor of Science in Nursing program next fall. That'll be our first bachelor's program. So we're really excited about the opportunities that that will bring to our community. We just this year have launched Paramedic, which is a certificate program. We were authorized by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment to admit 6 students per year. So this isn't like nursing where we can admit 100 students. We are regulated to 6. They don't want us to flood the market with more paramedics than are needed. But that's okay to start small. So this, our first cohort is currently in classes. They have made it so far through fundamentals, pharmacology, and they're currently in medical emergencies. They've been in clinicals, and they've been well received by the various ER, OR, and ICU and dispatch sites. They're also going to be continuing on their clinicals through the break. And I'm told by Lori Ray Hamilton, who I think is in the audience here, that the applications for the next cohort will be ready by Christmas for a fall 2020 start. So if anyone knows anyone who's interested in becoming a paramedic, there will be 6 slots open next year as well. Teacher preparation. This is our T-Prep partnership that we have with University of Colorado, Denver. This is an exciting program because it allows us to train teachers, which are badly needed in our community, and they can go all the way through to their bachelor's degree and full certification without leaving Trinidad. So they do their first 2 years at Trinidad State, and then CU Denver teaches the second 2 years. We have about 21 students in that program. We've been admitting about 7 per year. So there is now, we have a 3rd year cohort who is doing their classroom teacher support work. And I just wanted to read to you a couple of comments from our Vice President for Academic Affairs, Lynette Bates, about this program, because she's been in observing some of the classroom work and student teaching by the Year 3 students. And she says, I went to the presentations this past Tuesday. 4 of the students are Hispanic, 2 females, 2 males. The course was learning and development, and our students spent 60 hours each in kindergarten classes at Epper Elementary. I was more than impressed and shared my gratitude to our students. For the 70 kindergartners, the school district was able to staff with 3 licensed teachers. So that just really underscores the critical support that our students are providing, both to the teachers and to the kindergartners. This program is an answer to prayers for me. The young people can earn their BA without leaving home, and they are the future of educators who are invested in rural education. That was from Lynette Bates. Building trades. This has been probably the most common request I've heard since I've been here, and because of the many challenges we've had with attracting students, and as we've talked to contractors out in the community about the possibilities of starting this program, we have settled on a certificate, 2 levels of a certificate that's based on the NCCER curriculum. That is an industry standard curriculum that also has a certification. We believe that it's best to embed this at the secondary level in order to build a strong pipeline, also to help revitalize our secondary CTE programs. So they'll be offered as concurrent enrollment classes, and we're starting out working with 2 schools in our service area, Trinidad High School and John Mall High School in Walsenburg. There's a possibility that Levita will come on as well. We've been talking to the city, and we're understanding and are hopeful that there will be some projects that our building trade students will be able to work on with the city. Technical theater is another program that we're trying to get off the ground for fall 2020. This is focusing on all of the technical aspects of theater. That includes the front of house operations, lighting, sound, set design, deck crew, stage management, and students who graduate with this degree will have transferable skills that are applicable in a variety of work settings, such as museum studies, trade shows, and conference and event management. We have just recently submitted an application for a grant through DOLA, Department of Local Affairs, to upgrade the Massari Theater, the lighting and sound in the Massari Theater. And this is important because it will enable us to not only host performances with modern equipment at the Massari, but also be able to train our students who are in the technical theater program using modern technology. Lastly, on the certificate side, we are implementing a trail building certificate. This is to support work happening with our new state park, Fisher's Peak. We are still writing the curriculum for this program. Our staff will be attending the National Trail Builders Association National Meeting in March, and our plan is to have courses in the fall 2020 schedule. As far as transfer degrees, so everything that I've talked about up until now has been primarily career technical programs. Transfer is also a big part of our mission. Students who want to get the first 2 years of a bachelor's degree here at Trinidad State and then transfer. We're working on 2 new articulations that are aligned with our partners with the Fisher's Peak work. One will be an AS, Associate of Science in Natural Resources, and that's a partnership with CSU Pueblo. Another is an AS in Wildlife Biology, and that's going to be with Adams State University. And then we're also working on an AS in Pre-Engineering, and this will be with CSU Pueblo. Thank you. Very quickly, our line tech program, gunsmithing program, law enforcement programs continue to have really healthy enrollments, so just wanted to let you know that. As far as goals for the next 5 years, I've set out 5 goals that I went over at our fall convocation with staff and faculty, and I've been communicating these out to the community. We're hoping to grow enrollment by 20%, increase our graduation rate from 45 to 50%, close our equity gap because our Hispanic students are not graduating at the same rate as our white students. We have a 12.6% gap that I'm hoping to close. Double the number of transfers from 100 to 200 per year, and then launch a capital campaign to support our facilities plan. And that will roll out over the next several years. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Doctor. Got some exciting things here at Trinidad State. That's awesome to hear. I'd like to apologize. I didn't introduce 2 distinguished gentlemen in the room here today with us. The Honorable Senator Larry Crowder is with us today. have my shoes on, Senator. And we also have Werfenau County Commissioner Gerald Cisneros here with us today. At this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Bonnie Aaron, School Superintendent, Trinidad Public School District.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here. I've been in Trinidad about a year and a half. Am I speaking too close? And I think that I started campaigning for the 2018 campaign before I even unpacked. So it's been a ride, and I wanted to share this journey with you, but I wanted to first thank you. It's very humbling as well as exciting to make the following announcements, but we could not have passed this bond issue without the support of key community leaders, county and city leaders, and the public as well of Trinidad that has made this possible. And I'll share a little bit of this journey with you. First of all, I wanted to talk about the BEST grant. BEST stands for Building Excellent Schools Today. So I'm just going to use the acronym BEST. In 2016, the district put out to the voters a mill levy override, and it failed. In 2018, I ran that campaign for a mill levy override and a bond issue, and it failed. Finally, in 2019, at a 60% approval rate, the bond issue passed. And that's what I'm going to share just with you briefly. First of all, there was some campaign barriers that we had to overcome throughout the community and within our own district personnel as well. But I want to start out with, before I came here, you had the campaign to legalize marijuana. And part of the propaganda was that this legalization of marijuana was all for students. It was for the kids, it was for education. But when I got here and I was campaigning in the 2018 campaign, the community was saying, well, why didn't you use the funds wisely from all the marijuana revenue that was part of this propaganda? And I had to explain to them that the school district does not receive any marijuana money, so that it was not being misappropriated because there wasn't any. So I went to the city and asked for them to use their marijuana money to pay for our school resource officer, and we also needed another one because with the legalization of marijuana, it was so pervasive among our students and accessible, getting it from their parents, their grandparents, and I was denied. So we turned our energy towards getting some of the marijuana money through the BEST grant. And the BEST grant is the only way that school districts can access marijuana revenues. It's an excise tax. If you're one of the school districts lucky enough to be awarded, there were a lot of school districts that applied and very few who are actually awarded. But this BEST grant program has been around since 2008 with funding from the Colorado State Land Board, Colorado Lottery, marijuana excise tax, and local matching dollars. The BEST grant money can only be used for construction of new schools, general construction, and renovation of existing schools, and the structures and the facility structures. It does not go towards teacher salaries. So there's a process in the BEST grant program. First, we had to pay $33,000 for the development of a facilities master plan. Then you use that plan to write your BEST grant. Then you go to Denver and you take a team to defend the capital yourself to the Capital Construction Board. And then you wait for the award announcement. So last year we were in the queue. We didn't quite have it. If somebody else defaulted on their BEST grant award, then we would have gotten it. And the day that we found out that we failed the bond issue last year, we also found out that we were awarded $11 million. And I had to, it was very difficult to write a letter to the state telling them that we would forfeit that $11 million because we could not come up with our local match. So after the award announcement in June, we started our campaigning for a local match, and that was for a bond issue. And the project that was awarded is the Trinidad Middle School renovation. Some of you have that on your desk, on your table, the first couple of the tables in the front. I didn't bring enough copies. So the total project for the middle school renovation, the middle school is 107 years old. It has really good bones. It has the greatest capacity for classrooms. That total project is $15.5 million. Well, the best grant cash award is for $11 million. It was 71% funded. The local match for the school district was $4.5 million. We didn't have that in the bank, so we had to go to the voters. What's interesting is last year when we were awarded the grant after being in line to get the grant, it was a 36% match. So the more times you go out to your voters and show due diligence that you're trying to do this, the more credit you get. So then we applied for a waiver after failing last year's bond, and now the local match was only 29%. So that was $4.5 million. And for the middle school, as many of you in here probably went through the school either as a high school, when it was a high school, or when it was a middle school, and it still does not have air conditioning. So it will get heating and cooling systems, new windows and doors, site improvements around the outside, new electrical and plumbing, new secured entry and access control, security monitoring upgrades, fire protection and life safety upgrades, technology infrastructure upgrades. It will have 30 smart classrooms and a district data center. So with the bond initiative, with the best grant aside, we were able to keep our mill levy, maintain it, and continue it at 4.569 mills, which would generate an extra $7 million. Not extra, $7 million. So 4.5 of that 7 will go towards our local match. The remaining 2.9 will go to long overdue upgrades to the Trinidad High School in the way of infrastructure and some ADA compliance issues that we have there. So lastly, just in case you're wondering why we didn't take care of all this deferred maintenance in the past, when we've known we've had this deferred maintenance, and it's not like we haven't tried to go out and get a best grant. One of the ways Colorado balances its budget is to take from the education budget. It's called the budget stabilization, or the BS factor. Over the past 11 years, Colorado has withheld $12,354,686 million from school district number 1. This money would have paid for salary increases for our teachers and for the capital outlay if we had received that. So now you kind of know both sides of the story, what we're dealing with and why we had to go to the public. And we do thank you for your support, and we will start renovation of the middle school, hopefully at spring break, because we have students in there. It will be messy, it will be ugly, it will not be on time. I'm just warning you, when you start to hear complaining, that's just part of, if anybody's ever renovated or been involved in new construction, it's not pretty. But so we ask for your patience in advance and for your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Aaron. Before we move into our next segment, I'd just like to say a special thank you to all of our law enforcement in Los Animas County and the City of Trinidad, and recognize how hard their efforts go to what our next topic is going to be regarding the opiates in the community. So Charlie Chief Glorioso, Sheriff Navarrete, and District Attorney Henry Solano, the courts, Mr. Kryman, Mr. Mala, Judge Gerbracht, We thank you all for all your efforts that you do to help combat this issue in our community. So, round of applause, please. At this time, I welcome Mr. Joe DeGarbo.
Anyway, my story is about opiates and how our family got involved with it, unfortunately. And some of you know it and some of you don't, and it's really interesting how you all get caught up and you think your life is the best life and your kids are the best kids and everything's normal. Started about 11 years ago with a young son, had some school issues, get him through it. We moved him to the junior high, doing very well. He's straight A's, Mensa, music. I mean, life is good. One day, all of a sudden, it just starts. We get a call from the school. We find, I think it's Vicodin. And you wonder, where in the world did you get Vicodin at? We didn't have that as a family. Well, where it come from was from a dentist. Our oldest son had wisdom teeth, and we had it at home. Didn't even know what it was back then, really. And he happened to get a hold of it, wanted to fit in with the crowd, and that's when life started changing and unraveling as a family. What was interesting about it, his best friend and him going down the same path. The best friend goes, and I think today he's working for the FBI, and here's my son going through numerous incarcerations, pretty much going through drug rehabs, and so what you do as a family, you're very confused, and you're thinking, it's not our son, it's the other kids, and you start realizing, well, he's one of them that people talk about. And as you keep going through life, you try to get him into rehabs. So you start off with a 30-day rehab, and you're working through it, and you're thinking, he's fixed. And you realize you get him home 3 months later, that's not the answer. The next answer is you do a 90-day rehab, and you think, oh, he's fixed again. Gets in more trouble, all of a sudden starts skipping school more, music stops, science fairs stop, and you're realizing you're losing him because he's hanging around a bunch of other kids the same way. They're all such a support group. Well, what ends up happening in the rehabs with the support group, and this is my opinion and my observation through life, is that you get a bigger support group and they just kind of turn you into some better stuff that you think, oh, this is going to get easier and better for myself as a young individual. So then what you do, I got to thank again Marty Moloff, the courts, the police, the sheriffs, they all do their part every day. And you think, okay, how do we go to the DAs and how do we make a deal with the DA to get him through, because he doesn't deserve to be in jail, or hopefully he doesn't have a felony, and at that point you don't. So the next thing as a family, we would have the capacity to send him to an outdoor rehab. And this was in Utah, $50,000 later, 120 days, comes back clean, and you think, wow, we did a great job. He's fixed again. The only thing is, he's not fixed. The only good thing that comes out of that $50,000, he could light a fire in less than 10 minutes with a stick and a bowl, which you think you did well. He could live under a bridge now because you can't do nothing to enable him anymore. So you look at that and think, wow, this is the answer. Well, then you go on, and pretty soon, I'm going to go another 3 months after the 120 day, he's introduced to heroin, and then he's doing an overdose of fentanyl, which is big things. Today, you just realize that we're 10 years before our time when you see what's going on today, which is amazing. So he's kind of a pioneer, I guess I should say, not in a good way. And so then you get him through that, through the fentanyl overdose, and he's back out on the streets. And what ends up happening, all of a sudden, he becomes a criminal. Because what the heroin and the fentanyl do to you, they make you a criminal because you got to support your habit. And then you're hanging around other young kids that are, so you give them a little bit, they give you a little bit, or young individuals. And it's real easy to talk to him because he'll tell you his story and he'll really get into detail like I am. And he'll tell you there's people that you would think that do it, that you're with, and you'd be shocked, he tells you. And you just go on and on. So then the next step, after being in jail a few times, as a family, you feel, wow, this is good, he's in jail, because you can sleep better at night. You know he's in jail, so you feel very good about yourself. But then, a good example, one day we're driving home, and here he is walking across the parking lot of the jail, and you realize, oh my gosh, he's back on the streets again. And your heart just stops, because you realize at that point, he's going to go either right back to doing it, or he's going to hurt somebody else, and that's what you don't want. And then the bad thing about a family is, you do not want to go participate in life. And I know a lot of families like this in this town, and they've lost young individuals, and they say, you know, we get to talk to them, how, you know, we can't go out and we can't participate. We're worried about what people think. You almost feel like you're a leper, I guess, in a way, but you're not. People just don't know how to talk to you about it how to observe about it and the support that's out there for you. They say go to Al-Anon, that supports you. But the trouble with Al-Anon, as we talk, and I've never been into it for the support, is they can't talk about it. So nobody can still talk about it. And that's what's happening with our society. We don't talk about it, but we go through the rehabs and we do more and more, and the money, if you try to get insurance, and it pays for it. I've got a son that is in a high-end rehab in Malibu. Their rehabs cost $50,000, $100,000 a week, and they take care of high-end patients. And we were talking about the other day, some of them patients come back 2 or 3 times, have all the money in the world, and they can't even fix themselves. From alcohol to drugs to sex, there's so many different styles of rehab. But as observing from this town, and we call it a mental issue, my son wasn't in a mental issue until later on as you get more into the drugs. And today, the courts were kind enough to get him out of Trinidad 5 years ago. The negotiation was either you get him into a 2-year rehab or he goes to prison for 2 years. So we battled, got him into the 2-year rehab in Arizona, which was interesting about that rehab. He did very well, went to college for a little bit, got a job. 6 months later, back to doing opiates again, probably meth, heroin. The heartbreaking thing for us at that moment in life, we go down there, we drive down, we meet him, and he looked worse than anybody on the street you see in Trinidad. He's pretty much barefoot. All we can do is buy him some clothes, get him some clean shampoos, and drive off and look in the rear view mirror, because there was nothing we could do for him at that point in life. And that was the hardest thing in our lives, to drive off after 30 minutes of seeing that situation, because his choice was to do drugs. The idea is, they say you never enable them, and as a parent, you start out enabling. Other parents have told me this, and they've lost their sons and daughters over it. But where's that fine line of enabling and not enabling? Trying to get them a place to stay, is that enabling, or how do you teach your son or daughter a lesson? You don't. So it's really hard in life as you go through all this. And as a state, what do we do here for this town? I see it every day, looking out across where I work at the bank, watching across the park at all the different users we see every day out there, and watching the cops go out there and try to settle them down, trying to get them calm, or trying to probably arrest them, but then you're back on the streets again a few hours later or a few days later. So this is a big problem for us in Trinidad. I had a guy come in back in June, and we're sitting there, and you can see he's out of it, and we're very exposed as a bank because of our location. And he comes in, and we're talking about it, and he was nervous, and I said, "Sir, can I get you a bottle of water?" He says, "No." He said, "I'm just having a bad day." He said, "Well, come into my office, let's talk about it." He says, "I was going to rob you today, but it's being that you engage me." He says, "I'm not," and he walks out of the bank. So you really have to engage. I mean, we've had more than once where that situation is, or they're with their backpacks on the right in front of the bank, and kind of always find humor and everything. One day I've come in from lunch, and there's a backpack sitting by itself right by a desk. So I'm asking who it belongs to, and nobody answered. So I go and open it up, and there's a light on it. I'm thinking, crap, there's a bomb or something in here. What do I do? So I kind of grab it, put it by the door, go to my desk, and I'm looking over at it. That wasn't too smart. You're still in the bank with it. So I take it, and then I ask again. Nobody answered. I take it and put it outside. I realize still not too smart. So then finally got it further on. The gentleman said, "Oh, this is mine." And so now you got to have rules about not bringing backpacks in. How we've changed the society because of what the drug use is, and what's going on. The thing about my son, where he's honest, and it's interesting, he says if you're living on the streets, you're doing meth or you're doing heroin. And it's interesting today, he's not on the streets, but he still has his ways, because when you get a call from in Phoenix that he's in the hospital, it's because he used a bad needle. He's had friends that's lost their arms over using bad needles. The sad part for us as a family and the future of anybody, you may be able to save 10% of them, but that other 90% of the society that's went through this, that you get hepatitis or you get AIDS, or what happens when you're 40 or 50 or your heart finally fails on you. And that's what we get to face, and when, we don't know. And that will happen. To make him a good citizen, we got him out of here, and hopefully we did the right thing. But unfortunately, I always said he needs spirituality and he needs a job. But for him to work, today he has a felony. We kept him away from one, but it's harder to find a job when you got a felony. And how do you teach him to show up on time? How do you teach him to work a full day? I always said Habitat for Humanity. I tell him down there in Phoenix, go join it. Start working on time. A builder will take you on, and all of a sudden you're back to life. But he does not have that ability at 27 years old to be able to do that today, because he can't even get on time, because the mental aspect of just trying to do that, it's the little things. The rehabs don't teach you that. They just take your money, you're done. If you want to come back, we'll support you in a support group. that's fine. But unfortunately, the support groups, you're with the same people that do the same drugs, and then the next thing that happens, some of them die off, and then that's how much less friends you have. So I could talk about this all day, but again, we do have an issue here in this community, and luckily, like the judge has some good things happening in the courts and everything, and we just need to group together as a village and see what we could do to make it. We can't save the world, but maybe we could save this town, and maybe there's ways to do that. So that's my story, and if there's anything you ever want to ask, we're transparent about it. We'll try to help you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeGarbo. Change in the venue for a second. Mr. DeGarbo and a couple other members of our community came to the Board of County Commissioners a number of months ago asking for help. Asked for a forum where they can have this discussion of exactly the story here today. Los Animas County decided to try to figure out what we can do to help with our Sheriff's Department, our Department of Human Services, all of our staff, our commissioners, and we met up with our third judicial district and our courts. And I'm going to have Commissioner Felix Lopez come up and give a status of the update of Los Animas County and that program that we initiated due to you, Mr. DeGarbo, and the fellow citizens of this community that have these opiate problems. So, Commissioner Felix Lopez.
Good morning, Mr. DeGarbo. What a powerful story. I read in the last couple of weeks what a word crisis really means, and I think Los Animas County, Trinidad, we're experiencing that. I have a good friend. My daughter went to school with a young lady from China, and she was telling me that the word crisis, when it's written in Chinese, is made of two characters. One that means danger, and the other character in that word is opportunity. What an amazing thing when you write crisis in Chinese. We are so honored as the Board of County Commissioners to be invited by Judge Gerbracht and her team to join the Partners for Drug-Free Communities, where the conversation is open and the conversation is honest. So much so that in the last couple of weeks there was a concert that we had in the community, spearheaded by Commissioner Tony Haas, from a volunteer from Colorado Springs that came all the way from Springs to donate his time to play an evening of music in which the funds that were collected at night will begin to be the inception and the designation of the IRS 501c3 to begin a nonprofit to talk about it. We're even considering at the county to perhaps introduce legislation. We've spoken at the Colorado Counties Incorporated. We had our conference last week at which the three commissioners participated. So our voice was that, can we come together and perhaps write legislation that will help us in partnership with our senator and our state representative to bring some more resources to Los Animas County, because indeed these resources are so well needed. This story is not unique to Trinidad. This story of what we're talking about, I think the uniqueness, I spoke at the Colorado Counties Incorporated, and I had an opportunity to make a statement of the partnership that created the opportunity for us to come together and begin the dialogue. We were honored to be invited to be part of this group and support that. But what do we do from here? It's got to be more than conversation. We have to engage and be honest with each other. Joey DeGarbo and I go back to the 1980s. He and I talk about this ongoing. We went to college together, good friend. To have that honesty, to have the courage to stand up here and give the story, tells us that there are many more like that. So think about the word crisis in Chinese next time that we're thinking about our community. Look at those two characters, danger and opportunity. And that's exactly where we stand today. But I want to give you an update beyond that of what is happening in the county, what we are doing, and what are some of the initiatives that we have supported. And I want to give a shout out to Kim Gonzales. She's going to be up here in just a couple of moments. But one of the things that we are doing, anytime that you're an elected official, you do it as a partner, in collaboration with, because one individual alone cannot do anything. Kim will share with you later on that we have had 2 medically assisted treatment mobile unit vans that are now operating here in Las Animas County. The conversation began with the county commissioners, but Kim Gonzales made it happen. Recently, Las Animas County and work from the County Health Department was awarded a grant for $400,000 to continue the efforts, behavioral health, education, and assessment of what is happening in our communities. Last week, the Colorado Health Institute held a conference in Denver, Thursday and Friday. I was there. Had a conversation with some of the key stakeholders there. And when we tell the story of Trinidad, they are hearing this story 64 times. Every county has a unique story. But we're not going to stop. Anytime I have an opportunity to speak to those at the state level, at the federal level, I'm going to be bringing that dialogue to them. Right now, I want to recognize our District Attorney, Henry Solano. We are in conversations where the county, we are Team Las Animas County. Thank you for what you're doing, Henry. He's fully funded to support what is happening in Las Animas County when it comes to not only prosecution, because we think prosecution is only one perspective of what it does, but perhaps education to all the people that it comes in contact with. We heard a story a couple of months ago with Senator Cory Gardner. He was here in Las Animas County. We had a meeting right here in this very room. And a Las Animas County veteran shared a story with the senator, and the story went something like this. Senator, what are you going to do about me, a veteran, that needs medical services here in Las Animas County? I have to go all the way to Albuquerque, or I have to go all the way to Denver. Why am I having to travel all the way down there? That very night, the commissioners, we went out to dinner with the senator, and he made a commitment on a breakfast meeting that we had the following day, that he would work with the Veterans Administration to provide and open the opportunities for Las Animas County veterans to have medical, primary care access, and or otherwise here in Las Animas County. There are so many, yes, the bureaucracy and the obstacles that these veterans are facing are way too many. I tell you one thing, veterans are near and dear to my heart. I am enjoying the freedoms of this country as a naturalized citizen because of them. So I owe them a debt of gratitude. Whatever we can do from this perspective is great. Long story is that right now, Senator Cory Gardner has called the Veterans Administration to be at the table and to come up with a plan that is going to be signed, we hope, in the first month of 2020 to have medical providers for veterans here in Las Animas County, that they don't have to go for an x-ray to Denver or an x-ray all the way to Albuquerque. So we hope to see that initiative come to pass. So I'm going to give a big shout to Senator, and since we have him here, if you get an opportunity, send him a note. And let's not have our veterans have to travel 200 miles. There is a rule, I think ex-Commissioner Jim Vigil told me, the rule of 30 miles. However, that rule is not applicable here in Las Animas County, or it seems not to be applicable. We need to remove all those barriers. A couple of months ago, we had an opportunity. I ran into this United States Naval Academy geothermal program. One of the engineers that works in San Diego, Dr. Andy Sabin, was talking about an opportunity for Las Animas County to discover and explore geothermal energy. This individual from San Diego made it a point to travel and fly to Las Animas County because he has a map of Las Animas County perhaps using this type of energy to begin to produce clean energy from Las Animas County to be exported to other counties. So initiatives that can bring not only economic development for Los Animas County, but employment for our individuals. Your Board of County Commissioners is engaged, and again, through partnering, Mayor Rico and the Board of County Commissioners agreed that it was time to have a group of citizens that come to the two of us. He and I meet with some constituents throughout the community, about 14 individuals, to tell us what, from their perspective, what they see needs to be done, both from the city and from the county. And of course, the mayor and I work on this initiative, no promises, but we're hearing from our constituents as to what they see are some of the bottlenecks, what are some of the challenges, but more than anything else, what are some of the opportunities. And this very Friday, the group is going to be meeting with all the educational representatives, Dr. Epper, Dr. Aaron, and all the superintendents from Los Animas County, to talk about how can we, if in any way, shape, or form, can host and support any type of their initiatives for the benefit of the future of our students. A couple of weeks ago, I'm going to give another shout out to the 3rd Judicial. We had a presentation in Denver for the Underfunded Facility Commission with a project that we presented for the courthouse here in Trinidad. We did a presentation. Bob Cramen went with us, and certainly he put a big plug, Judge Gerbracht, of course, as well. But we received a grant of $500,000 to continue the renovations of the courthouse. We're hoping to use that $500,000 to write another grant to Dollar, Ms. Marshall, to Dollar. Okay, hopefully we can actually leverage these funds in communities like ours. That's how we do business. Partnerships and collaboration. The grant that we received from the Underfunded Facility Commission for the courthouse is going to be to upgrade the electrical systems and begin to look at the window systems that we have within. The Colorado Department of Transportation has held hearings throughout the state of Colorado. Last week at Colorado Counties Incorporated, they actually mentioned that they had every county at the table. This particular hearing groups and listening tours was to find out how are they going to commit the appropriations for the next 5 years. What does Trinidad need? What are we going to be talking about? 2 projects that possibly are going to be really big is going to be exit 6 or 8, I believe, where we're going to be able to get off on the second largest park in the state of Colorado, the Crazy French property. And the other one is going to be exit 11. The proposal is there, and so anytime you hear the CDOT coming and having this type of gathering, come and give your opinion, because it's very important. They're actually on the job of their budget setting. They have to have input from all communities throughout the state. That is going well, and we believe that the projects will begin to be funded in 2021. I want to give a big shout out to Arlene Lopez for the many years of service that she has given Department of Health and Human Services. She has been with us 40 years. 40 years. She, a couple of weeks ago, announced her retirement, and it is with great gratitude that I want to recognize Ms. Lopez for leading us with DHS and all your service to our community. A couple of more points that I want to address with you. The community partnerships yielded a tremendous park at the county fairgrounds. If you haven't seen it, go by the county fairgrounds. One of the missions and visions of the current Board of County Commissioners is to create more outdoor spaces for families to come together. We're working with a group of graduate students, the Architectural School of the master program is working with us to create a master plan for the Los Animas County. And part of this includes all of the county fairgrounds, perhaps to enhance a couple more physical buildings for families to come together, and or a baseball field. We haven't received the final master plan, but this is coming, and this is going to be in conjunction with funds from DOLA that perhaps we are able to do and inset more outdoor spaces. When we bring families and we give them opportunities to actually do and come outside and get away from the electronics and get away from all of the technology, I believe we have better communities. Green spaces are good spaces, and that's what your current Board of County Commissioners is working on. In closing, we are in the final draft of the fiscal budget for 2020, and I can tell you that we have a balanced budget, and we have had an opportunity to consider recommendations both from the union and from all employees from the county, and we're going to be providing pay increases beginning in 2020 for our employees. I am told that they have not received an increase for at least 8 consecutive years. So we have a plan in place that will be getting approved here shortly, and it gives me great pleasure to be part of this team to be able to help our human resources, our employees, because they're the ones that get it done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now I'd like to introduce one of our shining stars for Los Animas County and Huerfano County, our Director, Ms. Kim Gonzales, for our Health Department.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Kim Gonzales. I'm the Executive Director for the Los Animas Huerfano County's District Health Department. I'd like to talk to you today about a task force that I'm actually been appointed for. Back in July of 2019, Governor Polis asked the Executive Director of Colorado Department of Human Services, Michelle Barnes, to create a task force to evaluate Colorado's behavioral health system and develop a statewide blueprint to reform the system, and the goal of enabling Coloradans experiencing behavioral health needs to receive a timely, high-quality service in our communities. So this task force is created of a main task force, and then we have 3 subcommittee task force, which is Children's Behavioral Health, the Safety Net Task Force, and then also the Long-Term Competency. The Children Behavioral Health is to develop a plan to address how we deliver and manage children's behavioral health and improve outcomes. The Safety Net is to offer a roadmap to ensure Coloradans have, regardless of their acuity level, ability to pay, or co-occurring disabilities, can obtain appropriate behavioral health services in our communities. And then we have long-term. This will offer a plan for individuals in the criminal justice system who have been found incompetent to proceed and offer future solutions to increase community interventions, means to reduce, and demands for forensic solutions to mental health. There were 500 people that had this opportunity, and I was fortunate to be selected to the Safety Net Committee out of Colorado as public health. These committees are formed of stakeholders, consumers, leaders across departments, agencies, points of care, behavioral health systems, and many other organizations. As we look at the behavioral health challenges, you can see almost 12% of Coloradans report poor health issues, according to 2007 Colorado Health Survey. Colorado is ranked 43rd out of 50 states, plus the District of Columbia in 2018, of Mental Health Index and Mental Health America based on 15 measures. About 1 in 13 Coloradans, 17.6%, did not get the needed mental health services in 2017. An estimated 500,000 Coloradans are dependent on alcohol and or use illicit drugs. So as we look at behavioral health, we actually look to see what does that mean in our committees. So going forward, an individual with mental health and emotional well-being develop in actions that affect his or her overall well-being. Behavioral health problems and disorders, including substance use, serious psychological disorders, suicidal ideation, or other mental health disorders. And then problems ranging from unhealthy stress and subclinical conditions, diagnosable treatment conditions. So as we look in our task force, we are creating a blueprint to develop, hopefully have this developed by July 2020 and send it to Governor Polis. This is, as part of this work, the task force and subcommittees are conducting both legislative and fiscal analysis so that we can identify how the behavioral system might be more effective and efficient. As we look outside Colorado, we have learned that other states have pieces of strong behavioral systems, but no one actually has the solution. The blueprint will include the details of staff, public policy, budget resources needed for priority recommendations, as well as who will be accountable. Like I said, the plan will be delivered to Governor Polis July 2020 and will include the recommendations needed for implementation. Our goal with the task force and subcommittee is to talk to everybody about behavioral health. With your help and input, Colorado can be the state that all others look to and have the example of the behavioral system for years to come. We have public testimony that is available for anybody who would be willing to testify on any behavioral health or substance use. If you are interested, please see me after. And as we go forward, we will go into local opioids and substance use. So one Colorado resident dies from an opioid overdose every 15 hours on average. 4 out of 5 heroin users report that they have received their first opioid from a medical provider. Here's a map that shows Los Animas and Huerfano counties at the highest quartile, the highest opioid-related overdose death rates across the state. Huerfano County prescription opioid mortality rate is 13.4%, and Los Animas County is 9.6% out of 100,000. As we dive deeper into more local data, I've broken out the drug overdose deaths as an issue in Los Animas and Huerfano County. These slides show a higher rate than average in Colorado as a whole when it comes to drug-related deaths, pharmaceutical opioids, heroin, methamphetamine, and cocaine. We're seeing that pharmaceutical opioids have been the major culprit. And I'm sorry this slide is so small. I have a bigger picture if you guys want to see it after. Opioid prescription fill rates are higher in Los Animas and Huerfano County than your state average again. Both counties have higher rates, greater than 1 fill per person in both counties, and females have been the highest rate of opioid prescription fills than males in the past years. Some emerging issues that have been coming forth out of our Healthy Kids surveys, Colorado Violent Death Reporting System, and behavioral health is showing that suicide rates between 2015 and 2017 represent a growing problem in Colorado. And here you can see that Huerfano County between 15 and 17 is nearly 2.5% higher at a rate of 51.4% for residents, and Los Animas is not far behind at 26%. In Los Animas County and Huerfano County, we are seeing some new emerging issues that go forward with our youth. In 2017, roughly 1 in 15 students in Region 6, that includes Baca, Bent, Crowley, Huerfano, Kiowa, Los Animas, Otero, and Prowers, seriously considered suicide. And this is reported out of our Healthy Kids Survey in 2017. Colorado has over 300 behavioral health providers per 100,000 residents. However, Huerfano and Los Animas County have rates much lower than the statewide rate at 138 to 100 behavioral health providers. And here you can see this is what's causing an issue. So going forward, public health is looking at an upstream approach. Here you can see our theory of change to help us look at a vision and the impact, outcome, and strategies going forward. We are looking at the upstream approach on prevention and substance use and opioid use within our communities that will help move the work forward in Los Animas and Huerfano County. Some of that work moving forward includes the medical assisted treatment van that is coming through Front Range out of Pueblo, which will be here on Wednesdays starting next month and will be parked at the health department. We have just received a medical assisted treatment expansion waiver grant, which will allow us to help fund physicians between Mount San Rafael, Salud, and Spanish Peaks Regional Medical Center to have physicians become MAT waivered, which will help in the medical assisted treatment. They will be able to do intake and inductions at their clinics or ER, and then refer them to the MAC clinics, whether it be through Front Range or through Health Solutions. We are spearheading coalition work in our 2 counties that are working directly with substance use and opioid use within the communities, specifically youth in prevention and risk and protective factors through our Communities That Care program. We realize that a lot of our youth need community connectiveness beyond the basic human need of social networks and relationships. We realize that social determinants of health is a big component within families needing, whether it be housing, food insecurities, going forward. We also are providing naloxone training within our health department for local organizations and citizens, as well as distribution within the health department. And we continue over the past 2 years to provide provider prescribing training through the CDC guidelines for opioids and within the clinics. So lastly, if you have any questions, you can see me after, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Mrs. Gonzales. As always, you do a wonderful job in your presentation. She is sought after throughout the state for her work. So, again, thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to welcome Mr. Jose Esquibel from the Colorado Consortium for Prescription Drug Abuse Prevention. Thank you for being here with us today and traveling.
Good morning. My name is Jose Esquibel, and I recently transitioned out of the State Attorney General's office, where I was an appointee of Attorney General Cynthia Kaufman and then of Phil Weiser. And then in May of this year, I became the director now of the Colorado Consortium for Prescription Drug Abuse Prevention. I've had the honor to serve as Vice Chair of Prevention for a state substance abuse trend and response task force by appointment of several Senate presidents. I'm pleased to say that Senator Crowder has been a member of this task force for several years now as a champion for us. And that task force does several things. One, it monitors drug trends at the state level. It looks at effective approaches to dealing with drug issues in our state. Number 3, it works to help people. We have 4 committees, of which several of them actually work and have folks that work in communities across the state. And then the 4th piece is to provide recommendations to the General Assembly on policy recommendations. I'm very pleased to tell you, and can we move that forward? Is there a way to do that? Yeah. Thank you. We'll just do that number then. Is that this task force that we have One of the committees is the Consortium, Prescription Drug Abuse, to address the opioid crisis in our state. Folks, it has to take a collaborative effort to do this. This crisis is moving faster than we are. We have solutions. We know what they are. We're just not implementing them quick enough. And so we're very pleased that at the state level we are coordinating not only with state government, but so many different medical, public health, behavioral health associations. And now we actually have external relations staff that live in your different regions of the state that help and interact with you all. In this region, it's Judy Solano, who's based in Pueblo but does work out here, and I can connect more people to our work that way. But you can see all these different work groups that we have, really smart people helping us understand all the different complex issues around the opioid crisis. Now, what I'm here to address is that one of the things we have had the privilege of for the last 3 years is working with our College General Assembly on their opioid and other substance use disorders committee. And you can look this up online if you need to. But here are some of the faces and folks that are representing that committee. 5 senators, 5 representatives, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats. This is a nonpartisan issue. And yes, there may be a few items in here that get controversial, but I can tell you for the most part, probably 98% of the policy that this group has worked on is nonpartisan. And I'm very pleased that I have served as a co-chair for a task force that has assisted this committee 3 years now. And this committee sunsets this year. If a bill passes, it'll continue to meet every other year as we've helped bring together stakeholders to think about these issues. It's stories like we just heard from Ms. DeGarbo here, that for myself and for the legislators, and particularly some of the leaders on this, take this to heart. They know that our system is broken. We know and understand that addiction is not a crime. It is a disease, and people need help, and yet we are woefully underfunded and under-resourced to make it happen. But I can tell you that in the last 3 years, the last 2 years of policy that have been passed, and now at the 3rd year here, we are making more progress in our state in substance abuse policy in these last 3 years than we've made in the last 15. And I want to say thank you to these individuals. And if you know any of these people, if you happen to be from outside the Los Animas area and you know some of these folks, thank them for that work. And then particularly for Senator Crowder, who supported his vote for the bills this last year to make sure these resources get out to you all is very critical. Now on your table, I'm not going to go through all the bills, but there are 5 bills that passed out of the committee this year. One is on prevention, and let me just give you some highlights on that. And certainly for anyone who has an interest, I am more than willing to either come back and have a discussion or get on a telephone conference call with folks to talk about these bills if you have any questions, concerns, or issues around those. And particularly through CCI or the Colorado Municipal League with Megan here and others, we'll have the conversation about concerns. There will be opportunity for folks to consider amendments as we go through the process this year. But some highlights in prevention. One is it's proposed to improve insurance coverage of pain management alternatives to opioids. We need to be able to fund for physical therapy, acupuncture, things that don't include a drug in order to get better if you have acute pain. Now, I know in our state, it is allowed that if someone has chronic pain or you're in palliative care of some sort, opioids are very appropriate. There's no restrictions there. But there must be alternatives for folks when you have a day surgery and you don't need 30-day supply of some sort of opioid. Expanding continuing education for prescribers of pain medicine. We still need to educate doctors about these alternatives. Those are some highlights. But at the bottom of page 1, please, we want your support on this. Last year we managed to get some dollars to go directly to your public health offices to support the work like Kim is doing. And so that was not renewed. It was intended to last more than 1 year, but it was only put in legislation for 1. We want to see this ongoing continuously, and that was part of this bill in prevention. Let's go to harm reduction. The harm reduction bill here, I'll highlight that one of the issues that we're trying to work on is to make sure that people who are prescribed opioids, even if you just get a 30-day supply, by all means get naloxone. Get a prescription for naloxone. It doesn't hurt you. Naloxone is a safe drug. But so many of these overdoses actually happen in the home when people don't suspect it, particularly among elderly who maybe aren't counting the pills that they're taking. But we want to make sure that people who do use Narcan or naloxone in an emergency, if for some reason, since in the Attorney General's office under Cynthia Kaufman, we work to disseminate naloxone or Narcan to law enforcement all over the state. Some of those units, we want to make sure that if they are expired for whatever reason, that someone who uses it isn't going to get a civil penalty for doing that. And so there's going to be a piece of legislation here that at least allows folks. We do know that medically, naloxone, although it has a 2-year expiration date on the box, it's still effective years after that. Let us go on to treatment. There we go. This is a big bill, folks, and a lot here. And again, so many of the issues under this bill are issues that are attempting to tackle what you heard Mr. DeGarbo talk about, the frustrations and the challenges around treatment. What I do want to highlight in the treatment bill is on the next page, on page 4, is that it increases funding for the Health Services Core Fund for loan forgiveness and scholarships for individuals serving in health care workforce shortage areas. I want to let you know that one of the issues is the fact that you can't, and oftentimes don't have people out here who are trained or working. But we have put money into a program in the Department of Public Health and Environment that helps people pay back their loan, to get ways to help encourage them financially, incentives to stay here. And so I know that here at Trinidad you all have a program for addictions counseling, but now these young people can be educated to say that if you stay in this area or stay in your rural part of wherever you live in Colorado, you can get some loan forgiveness. And so there's a program that's in place. We just want to put more money in it. And then we do have a grant writing program that we're working on this year to help mainly frontier rural communities and nonprofits write for state and federal grants. We're doing that through my programs through the consortium, and we want to see that continue in subsequent years. Then if you go to recovery, here's the big one. Recovery, so many good things in this area, because once people are and get through that system, as you heard the story here, they need supports. They need supports. It's so easy to fall back into addiction. What are those supports? And so here we want to provide additional funding for housing assistance for people in recovery. We got to get them housed, we got to get them employed. We got to get them stable in order to continue them in their recovery process. The next one is expanding what's called the Individual Employment Placement and Supports Program. We've had this in our state for behavioral health folks with severe mental illness, where they get a coach. And there are employers that are willing to hire people with severe mental illness or even with substance use recovery addiction, and with a coach helps these people stay employed. And this may be one of the things that we heard in Mr. DeGarbo's story that's been a challenge, not having a coach, not having someone there to help check in on those times when things are stressful, or to work with that employer to help the employer understand the challenges of a person in recovery. And then the third item on that is create the Recovery Support Services Grant Program for recovery community organizations. We need more of these recovery organizations in our state to help support the people that are coming to the MAT mobile unit, that are getting themselves and their lives back together again. And then let me end here. That's the recovery piece there. And then, oops, sorry, I was going to leave you my information. You're more than welcome to get a hold of me, have some more discussions for the local elected officials. I'm more than willing to get on a telephone call to talk about these issues, or even come back down here sometime in early January and have more time for a discussion about what these bills mean. But know that whenever I come out and hear folks, and I traveled a lot with Attorney General Kaufman to many, many communities, I really, really want to make sure that we have the rural and frontier communities in mind for the work that we're doing. If something's working well, wonderful, I want to hear it so I can advocate for it and help continue to be a champion for it. If it's not working well, let us know, because we have a network of folks that we can go in and try to start figuring out ways to solve the problem, eliminate the barriers, and make things better for people who have an addiction and help them get to recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Esquibel, and thank you for coming to Trinidad and having this discussion with us today. At this time, I'd like to introduce our 3rd Judicial District Chief Judge, the Honorable Judge Leslie Gerbracht.
Good morning. I'm sure it's apparent to everyone here after listening to my friend Joe and Ms. Gonzales and Mr. Esquibel that the opioid problems is huge. It's insurmountable. There's not one specific answer. And I was very happy to hear Mr. Esquibel just talk about collaboration, because it really does take a village, and we have to take care of our folks as best we can, and what works for some people doesn't work for other people. So it's a big approach. Our partnership for a drug-free community has been mentioned by a couple people. Mr. Maloff, Marty Maloff, the chief of our probation department, he and I sat down 5 years ago and tried to brainstorm what can we do about the heroin and opioid use in our community, because it was really ravaging our young people. And so we sent out a letter and we invited everyone in the community that we could think about to come for a half-a-day session and brainstorm. And what came out of that was our Partnership for a Drug-Free Community. And Marty and I were both very, very pleased when Luis Lopez contacted us earlier this year and said, you know, our county commissioners and our county would like to become more involved in this task force, and what can we do? And we're really happy to have their support. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that have come out of the task force. One of the things that I'm most excited about, and I want to give a shout out to Dr. Aaron. Is she still here, or did she have to leave? Maybe she left. But also to Chief Charlie Glorioso. We have started a program in the middle school, or I'm sorry, at Fisher's Peak, and it's a life skills program. And that program was funded by the city of Trinidad. And we really appreciated the city council's support on that. But our police officers volunteer to go into Fisher's Peak and meet with kids. Is it once a month, Chief?
We're meeting once a week for 8 weeks.
Once a week for 8 weeks. Right. So it's once a week for 8 weeks, and they pair up with kids, and it's a software program, and it's a life skills program, but it's also substance abuse, and it's anti-bullying, and it's educational resources. But what's really cool about this program is that our officers pair up with kids in the 3rd grade, and then they follow them to the 4th and the 5th grade. I firmly believe prevention is where it's at. How do you measure that? It's going to be 20 years before we can say this program really helped in prevention of substance abuse. But I really encourage our community to express your support to Dr. Aaron and to the chief on continuing this program. And the chief tells me that he never has any problem at all getting his officers to volunteer to do that. And so I think that's really, really great. Our partnership with Kim Gonzales at the health department has brought forth many, many of the initiatives that we've been able to continue on. We were able to start an interagency oversight program 3 years ago, which is funded by House Bill 1451. We've been able to do some really good things with that program. One of the things is that we were able to hire a truancy prevention specialist. For those of you in this room know that truancy prevention is my signature program, because if we can't keep kids in school, then we can't keep them out of the court system, we can't keep them off the streets. It really starts at a really young age. So we now have a paid person who works with truancy prevention in the Trinidad public school system, and that's funded through our interagency oversight group, again funded by House Bill 1451. We also have started just in the last year a peer mentor program. We have a drug court program in our district courts, and I want to talk about that just a little bit. Our 75% of our clients who are in our drug court program have a heroin or opioid addiction. And I want to just throw out a few little stats. In 2018, there were 12, this is not going to sound like it's very much, but there were 12 felony cases filed. 10 of them were filed as controlled substances, 2 of them were filed as marijuana cases. In 2019, so far we've had 42. So you can see the increase. 38 of them were for controlled substances and 4 of them were marijuana. But what I want to caution you about those stats is that doesn't include the person who was charged with burglary because they were breaking in somewhere to get something to sell so they could buy drugs. That doesn't include the felony case that was filed on criminal trespass because they were squatting in a home because they are homeless and they have substance abuse and they don't have any place to live. Most of the cases that we see in the courts, I think Mr. Solano's nodding his head back there, and Marty Maloff, our chief probation officer, almost all of them have some underlying substance abuse problem. They just may not have initially been charged with a drug case. Sometimes I hear criticism from the courts, and I hear criticism from the probation department that we're not doing enough to solve the drug problem in Los Animas County. You know, we can't do it all ourselves. It does take a collaboration. It takes a village. Just briefly, if someone is placed on probation, they go through an initial assessment to determine what their needs are, and if they are testing positive for drugs, or if they are self-identifying that they are using substances, we have a number of treatment programs that we provide. Over 20 years ago, when I came to this community, and I've always worked in the criminal justice system, it was about, locking them up. Let's lock them up. We're not there now. We are into treatment. We recognize that substance abuse is a disease. We need to provide treatment in every way that we can. When someone uses heroin, it changes their brain chemistry. It changes their brain chemistry that makes it more difficult for them to get this addiction under control. Joe talked about unable to get to work on time. I mean, it takes a young person that had many, many hopes and dreams and skills and high IQ and ability, and it changes their brain. So it's a very sobering thought. But we have outpatient treatment for our probation folks. We have an 21-day inpatient program through Crossroads. We have a 90-day residential program at Alamosa and through at Lamar for community corrections. We have another 30-day program at Rosada, a 30 to 45-day program. All of these programs are being paid by all of us. It's being paid by our taxpayer dollars. What happens when we send these folks to these treatment programs? We can't make them accept this treatment. We can send them, but if they walk away, or if they use, if they're kicked out, then they're back to us. And then what do we do? I don't have a judge in this district that wants to send someone to Department of Corrections because they have a heroin addiction. But if we provide all of this treatment and it doesn't take, and they continue to reoffend in our community, we don't have a lot of options left. Our next task force meeting is December 16th at 9 o'clock at the courthouse, open to the public. We don't believe that we have all the answers. We want to work with our county commissioners. We're so happy that they've joined us. Ms. Gonzales, the Department of Human Services, we have the schools, we have the police department, we have the sheriff's office. We're all working together. And I just want to applaud Joe. It's really hard. It must be really hard. As he said, we don't talk about it. And we need to talk about it because it affects many, many, many families. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. I know we're a little bit behind, so I'm going to finish it.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Bernice Renner, Department of Human Services, Eligibility Technician. Mrs. Arlene Lopez is a little ill, so she's going to speak on her behalf. But I also like to recognize Ms. Renner. She's announced her retirement as well with the Department of Human Services after 30-some years of service. So thank you for this.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? I'd like to thank you for the opportunity this morning to speak about the Los Animas County Department of Human Services. As Commissioner Lopez told you, I'm Bernice Renner. I'm the eligibility supervisor at the department. And I am speaking for our director, who is back there coughing and coughing and coughing. And I guess this goes under all other duties as assigned. So please bear with me as I read Mrs. Lopez's report. DHS is a state-regulated, county-administered system, and our successes are measured by CDHS. Our programs are measured by the timeliness and accuracy of processing applications for eligibility programs, child support collections, timeliness of response to new child and adult abuse, neglect investigations, assessments, monthly contacts, closures of cases, as well as the number of children in congregate care who enter or re-enter out-of-home care. Each program we administer has a different set of goals that we strive to achieve and maintain. I would like to speak a little bit about each of our programs where we are able to see our success in the faces of the many people that we serve every day. Most of you recognize our department for providing SNAP, or other word, food assistance, and Medicaid to our county citizens. We average approximately 1,750 food cases with almost 3,000 household members. The work our staff does in the processing of food assistance cases financially impacts our county in the amount of $366,200 per month. Some of you may be aware of the recent news of the USDA issued a final rule limiting the waivers states and counties have used to continue providing SNAP benefits to able-bodied adults without dependents for more than 90 days in any given 3-year period, if they do not work at least 20 hours per week. USDA estimates that nearly 700,000 individuals will lose benefits totaling nearly $5 billion in food assistance for over 5 years. It is felt that SNAP should be a second chance, not a way of life. This is set to take effect April 1st of 2020. However, there are legal challenges and they're expected to go on before that effective date. This rule would approximately affect 175 cases in our county, with 20 of those having children in the household. Los Animas County continues to average around 3,500 Medicaid cases per month, involving over 6,000 individuals. A recent report indicates Medicaid spending in Los Animas County during fiscal year 2018-2019 was almost $50 million. This includes medical claims by service state, hospitals, supplemental payments, and skilled nursing facilities. Over the past 5 years, from July 2014 to June 2019, Los Animas County accounted for almost $225 million spent in the categories noted. Our other benefit programs include 53 aid to needy disabled cases, 177 old age pension cases, and 121 Colorado Works cases. Colorado Works program is a program for families with children, which includes child-only cases where grandparents or other relatives are providing the care for these children. Each of the programs I just spoke about requires accuracy and timeliness in the processing of the cases, which the state monitors on a weekly basis to ensure we are meeting the state standards. Our LEAP program, which is administered now through Goodwill of Colorado Springs, we have staff available to support these individuals who need help with applications locally in our office. We will also be presenting in the community any outreach that might be necessary to help those the LEAP program with applications. So if anybody needs that help, we're available for that locally. Our Child Support Services program is to make sure that children receive the consistent financial support they deserve from both parents. Child support staff offers the following services to meet the needs of these families: setting up child support and medical health insurance orders, collecting and distributing child support payments, locating parents, establishing parentage, changing child support orders, connections to community resources to help families. Our program manages 1,100 cases per month, and the efforts of this staff average monthly child support collections of $110,400. Our collections for 2019 total $1,312,000. The state rates our unit on the rate of collections, which in turn drives incentives earned for the county in the amount of $52,470 for 2018. This is returned to the administration of the Child Support Program. DHS also has a single entry point or long-term care services unit. They focus on helping our disabled and elderly populations, and they help them to remain in their home safely as to prevent a higher level of care in the future. Each person is assessed based on their needs. Caregivers and other services are approved to maintain health and safety. These services first require Medicaid eligibility, and our caseworker staff monitor our citizens for changes in their health care needs. The other focus of this unit is Adult Protective Services, which investigates allegations of physical and sexual abuse, caretaker neglect, self-neglect, and exploitation of at-risk adults. At-risk adults are persons who are 18 or older and who cannot provide or obtain services they need, or they may lack the capacity to make or understand responsible decisions. APS offers protective services to improve the health, safety, and welfare of those experiencing mistreatment. Our agency has received 169 reports through November and maintains contact with at least 25 open cases per month to ensure the safety and well-being of a person named in an allegation. Our involvement often involves working with law enforcement and the district attorney to assist with the criminal aspect of an allegation. Cases are often hard to prove, as an at-risk person is often afraid to speak up for fear of losing the perpetrator as a caregiver, or they may be a family member. They may also fear isolation or having to move to an assisted living or nursing home. An issue this unit recognizes is the lack of affordable housing for our low-income residents due to the migration of people following the marijuana legalization and increased homelessness for many individuals our agency works with. Our calls for assistance have increased, expecting DHS to help get them into housing. Lack of affordable housing has led to an increase in cases of alcoholic and substance using children or grandchildren moving in with parents and grandparents, leading to exploitation and theft from their relative. Financial exploitation is the second most reported allegation of self-neglect. We also provide child welfare services, which strengthen the ability of the family to protect and care for their own children, minimize harm to children and youth, and ensure timely permanency planning. Services stabilize the family situation and strengthen the family's capacity to care for their children. When safety is not possible within the family, services focus on the child's need for a stable, permanent home as quick as possible. Coming in January is the Family First Prevention Services Act, which significantly changes how child welfare is funded and incentivized. The idea is to preserve families first by paying for what works and evaluate the programs serving children and families to make sure they are effective. Children and youth in foster care have the right to be placed in the least restrictive setting relative to their needs. And if they can't be placed in a family-like setting, there should be appropriate treatment options for them. Services must be trauma-informed, be evidence-based, be listed in the newly developed clearinghouse, and be identified as work as part of the foster care prevention strategy in the child's individual prevention plan. Our child welfare workers have received 318 referrals so far this year. 138 of those referrals involve drugs as part of the initial report. This does not include the number of cases where drugs were found to be an issue after we began our assessment. As a result of these 2019 reports, there have been 7, and this morning before we got here, that number increased to 8. We got a call this morning of infants born drug exposed. We have had 57 children in foster care, and 40 kids have been placed in relative or kinship care, and we have finalized 4 adoptions. 100% of siblings have been placed together, which is a huge success. Our workers also provide protective services to families in their own homes so as to keep children safe in their own homes. Los Animas County currently has 3 certified foster homes where 8 children are living. Currently, CDHS has eligibility tech vacancies, child support tech vacancies, we have adult caseworker vacancies, and child welfare also has vacancies. Thank you again to commissioners for the increase in salaries in 2020. We hope that this is a way that we can keep more of our staff. In addition to myself and Mrs. Lopez, we have another supervisor who is leaving this year. Our total loyalty to our services at Los Animas County, 117 years between the three of us. Mrs. Lopez with 40 years, Mrs. Medicase, who is our child support supervisor, has 46 years, and I have 31. So, as always, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact our office. And also, we do have Michelle Kendall here, Child Welfare Supervisor. Pauline Medicase, our Child Support Supervisor, if you have any questions for us after. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Renner, and thank you all from Los Angeles County Department of Human Services for all you do for our community. This time I'd like to welcome Ms. Meghan Dollar from the Colorado Municipal League.
Thank you very much for having me here today. My name is Meghan Dollar. I'm with the Colorado Municipal League. For those of you who don't know, the Colorado Municipal League provides advocacy, information, and training to cities and towns across Colorado. We have 270 members, and so that, many of us within the Colorado Municipal League have a level of expertise in certain issues that we cover that all have a municipal impact. I am the lucky advocate within the Colorado Municipal League that gets to work on affordable housing issues, which is obviously a huge issue for municipalities across the state. And within that realm is homelessness. So I was asked to come here today to talk a little bit about homelessness, regulating behavior, things of that nature, but really mostly what other cities are doing across Colorado as well. So let me start with the regulating of behavior. This is certainly an issue across the state, like I've mentioned. Every municipality has something on the books, an ordinance on the books that regulates behavior and other nuisance violations, if you will. So there are cities that have specifically looked at behaviors such as camping, sit-lie ordinances, and then, like I said before, general municipal violations like urinating in public or other nuisance violations. I've specifically cited Denver, Durango, and Colorado Springs. Those are just a few that have ordinances of this nature. But I do want to note that it's very important to keep in mind that these ordinances apply to everyone in the municipality, all citizens, not just those citizens that are currently homeless. So that's an important piece to actually keep in mind when we're talking about regulating behaviors generally. And because local ordinances of this nature are perceived to be predominantly affecting homelessness, you actually we've seen a lot of judicial scrutiny for these ordinances. The big case right now is called Martin versus the City of Boise, and these were 5 homeless individuals that brought suit against the City of Boise, and within the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals, they found that the enforcement of the City of Boise's camping and disorderly conduct ordinances were constituting cruel and unusual punishment. And the reason that the court found that is because they felt that the City of Boise was not providing enough bed space within their shelters. So since individuals did not have anywhere else to go if they were enforcing anti-camping ordinances, this was considered cruel and unusual punishment. This case is still ongoing in the system. We at the Municipal League do expect the Supreme Court Yes, the U.S. Supreme Court to take this case up, but we have not gotten that confirmed yet. And so this will really be a case to watch going forward to see how municipalities generally can utilize these kinds of ordinances moving forward. Keeping this all in mind, most municipalities, when they do adopt ordinances that could regulate behavior, also set aside funding and prioritize funding for services to individuals experiencing homelessness. And so they couple that with the ordinance. This kind of eases some of those concerns when you're talking about, are you predominantly focusing on one type of the population? So when we're talking about services for homeless individuals, what do those look like? And we've already heard about a ton of them already from the county health department and human services department, I should say. But you know, predominantly bed space and shelters, providing permanent supportive housing, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means on the next slide. Getting people to substance abuse and behavioral health resources and providers, and again, we've heard from some of those today. And then finally, criminal justice diversion programs, and I'll go in more detail with this as well. So permanent supportive housing is essentially what you would call the housing first model. So it's an intervention that combines affordable housing assistance and then with support services. So with those services that address the needs of individuals that are chronically homeless. So what have we talked about today? We talked about substance abuse, their mental health issues, all things of that nature. So that they're designed to build, to make it so an individual can live independently and basically build their skills up again in order to become a more productive member of society and thus make sure that they do not become homeless again. So it's all about what can we do to get that individual housed first and then worry about getting them the treatment and other needs that they need. So I've listed Fort Collins and the metro area as examples of places that have included or developed a housing first model. Fort Collins has something called the Homeward 2020 program, where they have actually brought together stakeholders from all over, county, city officials, nonprofits, citizens, anyone that is interested in volunteering. And what they've done is developed a strategic plan that with the end goal of getting a certain number of people housed by 2020. So certainly we are upon that goal, and the city of Fort Collins is working diligently to put out a report to kind of talk about what successes that they've seen. So that's a good example of that. Additionally, the city of Montrose is also an example of where a community group within the city convened, and they also developed a strategic plan to end homelessness. These are all with focuses on getting housing first. When you look at kind of the numbers and national numbers, you see that investments in permanent supportive housing have actually helped decrease the number of chronically homeless individuals by 26% and since 2007, and that's a national number, and that's from the National Alliance to End Homelessness. So this is good for a number of reasons, but it also makes it so by putting this funding and prioritizing this kind of housing up front, you actually save money in the back end in terms of not needing as many hospital visits, not seeing as many crisis services such as shelters, and certainly saves money when it comes to jail and prisons as well. So on the note of jail and prisons, a lot of communities have actually looked at doing criminal justice diversion programs. So these are all focused on, instead of getting someone kind of trapped in the cycle of the criminal justice system because they are addicted to drugs or homelessness, and you heard from the judge today talking about some of these as well. they will get that person out of the criminal justice system and again become a more productive member of society. So kind of the big name version of this is called law enforcement assisted diversion. And so this is basically a pre-booking diversion program that empowers law enforcement to basically be a conduit to get individuals to services and address the underlying behavioral and substance abuse and mental health issues. There are 2 communities right now, municipalities I should say, actually 3 if you include Denver, which is a city and county, but the city of Alamosa and the city of Longmont both have programs like this. And what it does is it gets, as opposed to getting them booked, they'll get that individual to, say, a harm reduction program, so that person is less likely to overdose. You can get them counseling for nutrition, counseling for psychological issues, employment training, you name it. There's a lot of different options when it comes to community partnerships through a program like law enforcement assisted diversion. The communities that have this program right now, Alamosa and Longmont, have seen tremendous success with them, and Alamosa in particular, since they started their program back in, I believe it was 2018 last year, they've actually seen, I think it's somewhere between 17 to 20 individuals that have actually completed the program and did not reoffend, and thus saving the community money and getting people housed. So, that is one that, from the municipal league's perspective, that is certainly a big option for communities going forward. I do want to touch specifically on services in rural areas. And the biggest provider of that is the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. And they're based out of Denver, but they do work all over the state. Additionally, the Division of Housing within the Department of Local Affairs also has a permanent supportive housing program that they work with municipalities on as well, and they are also a huge partner for locals in that respect. So the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, though, has something called the Rural Initiatives Program, and so what they do is they partner with nonprofits within different local entities, and with the intent to provide services for homeless individuals within that. And you see several examples up here: Canyon City, Avon, Alamosa, and then Advocates Against Domestic Assault here in Trinidad as well. I wanted to highlight these because I think sometimes there is an assumption that because larger communities have more resources, but really rural communities have also been great leaders in Colorado in terms of getting their citizens and nonprofit partners with their local governments to actually solve some of these really huge issues going on in their local communities. And so this is one that I always like to end on because this is really important to keep in mind moving forward. With that, I will conclude my comments, and thank you so much for having me here today, and I'll be sticking around if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dollar, so much for that information and insight. At this time, I'd like to introduce the man who needs no introduction, your city mayor, Mr. Phil Rico.
Thank you, Luis. First of all, I want to thank everyone for participating today, and I especially everyone who has traveled from Denver and other areas of the state to be with us today, especially Senator Crowder, who has been a champion for Trinidad. He's done quite a bit, and I know this is going to be your last year, but what you've done for our community in our area, thank you very much. So anyway, before I actually get on my main topic here, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the opioid, drug, and homeless issues that we have here in Trinidad. First of all, I want to say thank you for the frank discussion that has been had here today. It's a discussion that we need to have. It's hard to discuss, but it's something that we are faced with, day in, day out, every day of the year. And it affects all of us in many, many different ways. So I wanted to tell you one minor story. A gentleman came to me a couple of years ago and said, "Phil, I need help." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm addicted." And he said, "Addicted to what?" He said, "To medications." And so he started telling me his story. And he said, I guess he had broken an ankle or broke a leg or something. And he went to the doctor. And the doctor, after 6 weeks or whatever, patted him on the back and said, "Okay, you can go home now." But by that time, he was addicted. So to me, that tells me our physicians are lacking in, I feel, some of their responsibility. What they should be doing is telling these patients, once they're on opioids, to go home for a couple of days, and if they feel like they still need the opioids, come back and I will do whatever I can to get you off of your opioids. That is not happening. Why? That should be a physician's responsibility. So I just wanted to mention that too. Somebody said it's a very difficult discussion to have, but it's very, very true. But the discussion that we've had today, as you can see, we have a lot of work to do. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but we need to work together to make this happen. Getting on to my main topic, it's a lighter discussion that presentation we're going to have. This is an update on the Fisher's Peak project. Get my glasses on so I can see what the heck I'm doing. The Trust for Public Lands and Nature Conservancy, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, GOCO, Colorado, City of Trinidad, and of course all the citizens of the area of Trinidad. We are all partners in the acquisition and planning of the Fisher's Peak 19,200 acres. What started out in 2017, in the fall of 2017, the idea was to purchase 4,500 acres of Fisher's Peak. Shortly after, in 2018, the Trust for Public Lands and Nature Conservancy came to me and said, why don't we just try purchasing all 19,000 acres? I said, well, let me take it back to the City Council. Took it back to City Council and they gave their blessings and went back and said, okay, let's go for it. So with that, started the process of purchasing the entire 19,200 acres. To this day, we have been very fortunate to be able to make that happen. In 2018, some of the things that have happened. In 2018, we received awards of $14.5 million from GOCO, Colorado, and the Colorado Parks and Wildlife for the purchase of the property. The Trust for Public Lands and the Nature Conservancy contributed $11 million to fill the gap because the cost of the project was going to be $25.45 million. So at this point, we will continue to find other funding to return the $11 million back to the Trust for Public Lands and the Nature Conservancy. In the past couple of weeks, we received a $650,000 grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And we are continuing, we actually have one larger grant that's, or an application in, but we won't find out about that until probably later this next fall. In early 2019, we hired Root House to do some public engagement. They came to Trinidad and they engaged approximately 150 residents about what the residents' ideas were for the project, and we got a lot of responses. The major one was held at SCRT in the evening, and it was a pretty packed room, so we had a lot of ideas. In March, the end of March, the project was finalized. Like I said, it cost $24.45 million. This summer, the Colorado Lottery honored us with the Starburst Award for best use of lottery funds. In the early summer, we received notice that Governor Polis wanted to make Fisher's Peak the 42nd state park. That was pretty exciting, and I mean, out of nowhere, he comes and says, yeah, we want to do this. He's very, enthusiastic about trying to enhance state parks around the state of Colorado and recreation. That became a reality in September, but he has also requested that we have a small portion of the property open to the public in 2020. So the partners, all 5 partners, we are beginning to figure out how we're going to try to make that happen. Fortunately, we also have the Trinidad Lake State Park within 5 miles. So now we have 2 state parks within our area, which is it's tremendous. I mean, I'm not sure how many other areas have something like this, but we do have. The Colorado Parks and Wildlife has tasked us to find a way to connect both Fisher's Peak and the Trinidad State Park. Because of the distance apart, there's a highway, so there's some issues that we have to contend with. We're working hard on that to try and figure out a way to get that access one to the other. Because we feel like they are going to be able to enhance each other's ability to have people visit Fisher's Peak, as well as camp and fish and hunt and whatever, and fish at the state park. Trinidad Parks and Recreation will be part of the planning process for the park. A couple of weeks ago, all the partners interviewed 3 companies for a master plan process. This Thursday, we will pick a company for that process. They will be responsible for short and long-term plans and goals. They will look at all aspects of uses, hiking, biking, camping, hunting, and other ideas. And they will also be continuing to engage the public. So they will be coming around and have public engagement in the city. So anybody who wants to, keep your ears open in case you want to be part of that process. We are also aware that complete access and build out for uses that the public will need will take several years. But we want to make sure that what we do will be done right. We don't want to open up the park, all at once. Because if we do, it'll become a disaster. And we want to make sure it's done properly. We also believe that there will be an educational component because the Nature Conservancy has noticed that there is a unique ecosystem on the mountain. So that was something that was pretty unique. One of the first tours that we took, I was driving a vehicle, and there were 4 or 5 of us in the vehicle, and everyone was looking around at all the views that you can see. But then there was a biologist that was in the vehicle with us, and his name is Chris. And he's looking around because I'm sitting next to him. And afterwards he says, the ecosystem here is very, very unique. So that's where that part came about. So, it has that educational component to go with it. And like Dr. Epper mentioned as well, there's going to be a trail builders program. It's going to be started by this Trinidad Community College, and thank you for opening that up. I think that would be a tremendous help for not only the college but for the area. Something that I never did realize this, and I don't think our partners, to some extent, never realized that this project would take on such an outreach, not only in the state of Colorado, but in several areas of the country. We're being approached by different organizations, media, to talk to us about what we're doing with the Fisher's Peak project. It's very interesting. So, as a matter of fact, I was just contacted by the Nature Conservancy. They're going to be wanting to talk to us, and they have an international magazine that goes out. So this information is not only going to be in the state of Colorado, but it's going to be nationally, but also internationally. I forget how many millions of people that they send this magazine out to from the Nature Conservancy. I believe, and I think we also have finally decided or realized that this project and our Space to Create project, which someone's going to report on in a minute, will bring to Trinidad the beginning of a diversified economy for Trinidad and Los Animas County. It's a good, clean industry, and that's something that I think every one of us wants to have, is a good, clean industry. So I believe that by utilizing these 2 projects will enhance our ability to bring good, economy back into the city of Trinidad. Access to Fisher's Peak has been on the minds for many, many years. As one gentleman mentioned to me a couple of months ago, I've known him for a long time, Abel Benavides, and he told me, he said, this should have been done 50 years ago. So that's really, I mean, so when you hear things, that's not, and I've heard that a couple of times. Why hasn't this happened before? So when you hear from residents like that, they're very excited about what is happening with this project. So I believe we all need to together to encourage what's happening on this project. I want to thank the Los Animas County Commissioners. They're also in very much support of this project. And even from the state, and Senator Crowder has been very supportive of us. Thank you, Senator, for your support. I want to thank everyone for your support for this acquisition and ongoing. We will continue to do the work. The City of Trinidad, City Council, in any way that we can, our partners. If you have any questions, you can contact me. You know how to contact me. I'm around town quite a bit, but also you can contact me through the City of Trinidad. The last thing I wanted to mention is, as you can see today, everyone that has spoken today has talked about their particular issues. But they've also mentioned one thing, that everything that we do in this community requires partnerships. Partnerships are the basis of everything that we do. And I want to thank you for helping in any way that you have done in the past, and hopefully will continue in the future. And I wanted to thank the City Council and the City of Trinidad for all the support for everything that we do for the City of Trinidad and for this project, and move forward with what we need to do, and that is to create a community where people want to come and enjoy and see what we have here, and provide something that I think some of the other parts of the state do not have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Rico. And you're right, it is a partnership, and without these partnerships, we won't have this success that we're having in our community right now. So I'd like to thank the lawyers that do all the I's and T's and check all this up for us, our county attorney, Ms. Pam Nelson, and our city attorney, Mr. Les Downs, for all your work for you. At this time, to speak on Space to Create, Ms. Marilyn Leuzler.
Thank you all. I think most of you are now more familiar with Space to Create than you were a few months ago, because the hammers are flying and walls are being put up, and there is more activity than we saw for quite some time. The part that was gone through earlier was not sexy or shiny or sparkly. It was all the financing and the partnering and contract business and all of that. So we're now at a point where you can see things happening. Nationally, in 2015, the arts added $763.6 billion with 4.9 million workers to the economy in the nation. In Colorado, that was $13.7 billion, and Colorado ranks #1 in the number of individuals who take part in some type of arts or cultural activity within the state. That's pretty impressive. I sit on the board of Arts for Colorado, and recently there was an Arts Caucus formed, and that has become quite active, and we're very excited about that. In Trinidad, we have a new state park, outdoor rec and trails. So many things are going on right now, it's just incredible. With Space to Create specifically, the city has worked very closely with our creative district, and there recently was a Commons Advisory Panel formed with 17 community members who met and went through all of the market surveys and groups that met early on to try and plan what would go into the Space to Create, and in particular the 20,000 square feet of community space that is now termed the Commons. And There, more recently, has been formed through ordinance a Commons Oversight Board, and that has been seated and has met twice now, and that will dig in more deeply to exactly what makes up the Commons area, that 20,000 square feet. So that group is working with HHL Architects, who did the major design for Space to Create in general, that project, and our Economic Development Coordinator, Wally Wallace, who's with the city. We have partnered with a number of entities. One of the first things that will take place in the Space to Create Commons is a Smithsonian exhibition that we were awarded recently. That will be in December of 2020, and it's in regard to crossroads, changes in rural America. And following that 6 week exhibition, we are to hold conversations, some of which may be difficult, some of which may be things that we do need to talk about in our community. And I'm really excited about that, just with all the conversation here today and various organizations doing wonderful work within the community. That will be a good opportunity for some of those conversations to be held. The main thing that we learned, having held public meetings and meeting with groups and individuals within the city of Trinidad, everybody said across the board adamantly, we don't want to be the next anything, and we don't want to be the new anything. We just want to be the better Trinidad. So that's what we have really been striving for, is to not remake Trinidad into something that we never have been. We don't want to be the next Taos or the next Salida or the next Breckenridge. We are Trinidad. So we're really working hard to preserve the history and current things happening and plan for our future based on celebrating what Trinidad is and who we are. And so that's been the #1 goal, I think. Collaborations and partnerships has come up so many times today, and that's absolutely vital across the board. Space to Create is a major $19 million public-private project working with the city of Trinidad, the county, and the state, Office of Economic Development and International Trade, Colorado Creative Industries, Betcher Foundation, Department of Local Affairs, History Colorado, and ArtSpace, which is lead consultant out of Minneapolis, a nonprofit organization that builds affordable work-live space for the creative work sector. We'll have 41 live-work units for creative entrepreneurs, artists, and others who would like to live and work there. We have in Trinidad new health opportunities. There has been more conversation with the community about health. There's a new organization for elderly health care advocacy, which is thrilling, seeing as how my hair gets grayer every day. With education, we see working more closely with K through 12 and with TSJC on programs that will help the community overall. The Fox West Theater is in the works as far as being turned back into a remarkable property hosting events and theater and such. La Puerta is in the works. The Champions Building. Goal Academy is housed in a brand new building. We have worked with CU Boulder. The first thing we did with them was through their Jewish Studies program, and they came down and did a program at Temple Aaron. They now are deeply involved in maintaining the temple as the oldest continual Jewish synagogue in the state of Colorado. They also have a PhD student who is currently writing her PhD on creative districts and Space to Create projects and how they help rural communities in the States. We've worked with Council of Governments for theory of change training. We have worked with, again, CU Boulder with the Creative Industries convenings annually, every October. We hosted a group of 40 Colorado rural funders to the city not too long ago. We have a meeting upcoming this fall, which will be held in the Space to Create complex for arts and law. They will help artists and other creative entrepreneurs to develop strategies and such based on the law, contracts and copyright law and that sort of thing. It's just so exciting to see all of these things work together, and I think that's the biggest thing that our community offers, as has been mentioned here many times before. It's that collaborative and partnering spirit that we in Trinidad have. We just don't give up. And we work hard to figure out ways to go about solving problems instead of just saying, oh, that's too bad, we'll never fix it. So I think that's what's really important. And for all of the people in this room today, I applaud everything that you do. Some things are quite different from our creative district Space to Create end goals, but everything adds together to make Trinidad the best small rural community in the state of Colorado. And we are talked about all over the state now and all over the nation in many cases, so we just keep on working toward that goal, and we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. And yes, we are being talked about throughout the state. Matter of fact, at our CCI conferences, Los Animas County is on the map for what we're doing with the 3rd Judicial District and our partnership for a drug-free community. So they are watching. At this time, I'd like to welcome a gentleman who also doesn't need no introduction, Mr. Larry Crowder, Senator Larry. Thank you.
I'm reminded by a story that I like to tell about a gentleman by the name of Glenn Gallegos. He's a CU regent now. A few years ago, he's given a speech in Pueblo, and it was similar to this. It went on for a while, and then Glenn got up to give his speech. And then about 30 seconds into his speech, somebody fainted and hit the floor, and he was okay and everything. And to this day, I tell Glenn what a great speech he gave. Uplifting, it just knocks people out. The reality is, it does take a lot of people. The progress that Los Animas County and Trinidad has experienced is about drive. It's about people that want something, and they want success. And my job at the state level is to make sure that we do everything we can to support you in that success. I think it's, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, we brought down a busload of investors on these buildings that were vacant throughout town. I had no idea at the time how successful that would have been, because today most of those buildings are actually being used. So it takes ideas, it takes drive. I think our job in government is to support. And I don't know about you, but I'm awful proud of Trinidad area for what they've done. I think there's been a lot of talk about the opioid and homelessness. I will tell you, when I went to Denver my first year, 8 years ago, and I see people laying on the sidewalk sleeping, it bothered me. Because even though we are not related, we are the same species. So we work toward that, but the reality is there's a lot of pushback on the homeless, because there's basically 4 different types of homeless. You have your career homeless, where this is what they want to do. They don't want any other life but to be homeless. Then all the way graduates down to the people that are, just down on their luck for a few days. And I think we ought to do everything we can to help them. We tend to, build up for veterans. We built a community in Denver, and for veterans that are homeless to get them going. And it was a good thing. But there's a lot more we can do. But we need to start looking at homeless as people. And that's where a lot of this comes down to. I think it's been spoken about on the opioid addiction. The gentleman talked about his son. I think you ought to take a look at these are still people we're talking about, And when we come up with, I will reflect a little bit on Fort Lyons. actually it just garnered a national award for being unique in the way it was put together and the purpose that it was put together for. You know, and the model of Fort Lyons basically is to get people out of their environment, to get them in a situation where, you know, they have to want to have this help. It's not something that's forced on them. A lot of the problems we have with, you know, people think it's easy to fix homelessness or opioid addiction and whatnot, but the reality is they have constitutional rights. And if they don't want to be, fixed, or if they don't want to be picked up and put in an establishment like Fort Lyons, there's nothing we can do. People they have to want to need that and seek out that help. But if people do, then there's ample help. But you know, the opioid, there's a lot of things that government really cannot fix. You know, and I think we need to be realistic about that. You know, the thing about it, Mr. Esquibel, who is gone, we've been working on this for a lot of years. And there are many actually suggested solutions as there are ways to fix it. You know, we are limited in the amount of money that we have to spend on opioid addiction. So what we have to do is we have to come out with the very best possible programs that would have results. And that's actually the name of the game is results. Can we actually fix people that are on this opioid addiction? You know, if they want to be helped, we can help. But it's a long struggle. You know, it's a long, long struggle. But we should not give up on them. That's the thing about it. You know, and I'm proud of everybody that has, you know, garnered the approach that we can help, because that's what it takes. You know, I will tell you, there's been some. You know, I had a question that was presented to me if I would support bills on opioid addiction. Of course it will. But you have to realize that a lot of these bills are not even formulated yet. So there could be situations where we would need to amend, we would need to do a lot of work on, because the bottom line is too, it's the taxpayers' money that has to be spent in a very aggressive yet way that is beneficial. We just can't. We cannot keep throwing money at this and not get results, because that's what's been happening for the last 40 years. Money has been thrown at a project with negative results, actually. So what we need to do is we need to be smart about this. We need to learn. And gentlemen like Mr. Esquibel, who was up here earlier, has really brought it together very, very well. So I would. You know, I would support what he does. You know, I will tell you, there's been talk about one of the issues that we're seeing in the district that is somewhat related to this is actually there's talk about, you know, closing private prisons in 2 of the counties, Bent and Crowley. And you have to realize the reason we have private prisons now is because of higher education. There was a lack of higher education funding, so a couple of decades ago what was developed was if we start a private prison which costs less to house the prisoners as well as confine them, then we can put more money into higher education. And now we're to the point where the country is looking at prison reform, and there's talk about closing these prisons down, the private prisons. But the reality is it's a public safety issue. You know, the judge talked about, you know, what the limitations in which she works in. You know, I think that we need to be careful about closing private prisons to start with. Not because they're private, because they do offer cheaper confinement. But if you start sending people directly to community corrections or community services, and they don't get those services, you are going to have a revolving door. So we need to be cautious about this. You know, even though it's a financial burden on these counties to lose that for property taxes and whatnot, the idea of prison closings should primarily be for public safety. If public safety is not effective, then close them. But the reality is, with the opioids, the drugs, and the heroin and everything that's been talked about today, I just don't see the numbers coming together on it. So it's going to be a situation where we have to feel our way through that. You know, there's issues of health care that are going through. Right now we're going to be, right now the governor's office has been pushing the public option for the state of Colorado. I will tell you, I've met with him, and when it first came out I was somewhat opposed to it, but the reality is that could very well help our rural hospitals by a greater reimbursement rate on Medicaid. So there may be merit to that, but until I see the legislation, I really can't, you know, take a side on it. But there's, you know, the reassurance that came out last year that the governor pushed, I was on board with that. I know some of the hospitals have had negative connotations toward it, but I think it's one of the best pieces of legislation I've seen for health insurance coverage that I've seen in 8 years. So I think there's merit to a lot of this. But anyway, I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I just wanted to, you know, basically tell you, you know, I'm kind of proud of Los Animas County and what they do. And, you know, it's just something we just need to keep working at. Everybody has ideas. How can we make it work for the betterment of people? But this will be my last year as legislator, but it has been quite a journey. But I will always remember, you know, Los Animas County and Trinidad. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. And your comments are true about our community and the city of Trinidad and the development that's happening here. It's been outstanding. We have a few developers that are working very hard, including the J. Chimino family, and I believe Miss Dana Crawford is here in the room with us today, so I'd like to recognize them. This time I'd like to introduce Congressman Ken Buck's office, Mr. Donald Beckwith.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for inviting us here today. My name is Donald Beckwith. I do represent Congressman Ken Buck, and he sends his best regards today. I'd also like to extend just Ken's words regarding Kimmy Lewis's passing recently, and his statement on it was, Kimmy has been a strong advocate for our state's farmers and ranchers. She will be remembered as a treasured member of the community who worked tirelessly to improve the lives of Coloradans. And I think that's a good place to start. I mean, I look in this room, I am by far the least qualified person in this room, but I represent somebody who represents our nation, who represents you. And as you guys work to figure out these solutions, to take charge of just a lot of these issues, I'm very encouraged to see how many people are here. I'm encouraged to see the enthusiasm, the cooperativism to just really address these issues. And you look at Congress right now, and I mean, even today, we're hashing out political issues that we wish we wouldn't have to be, but this is truly where the heart of America is. This is truly where things matter, where things get done, where, I mean, you will represent what we should reflect as a nation, as representatives. And I think that's important just to acknowledge today, and just to really state that you are making a difference, that there is a long road ahead, there's a lot to go, but it will be your solutions that ultimately provide the outcome. I mean, Ken has, and he has pushed for, I mean, especially with marijuana, just trying to become or set a standard that the whole nation can actually see at the federal level, and then from there we can work with it. States know what to expect. They can understand what the federal government is doing so that they are legally able to open the doors to either making revenue off of it or finding programs that will actually assist states that are treating these issues. I know the SNAP program was mentioned, and that's a big issue as well, but I just want to say on that fact that with that, it will be looked into. It's not just one decision that's going to be deciding all of that, but ultimately we do want you as a community to rise up and meet those needs. I mean, that's you are doing it now and you're doing it today, but it's going to be within the communities that is best served. You guys understand the issues better than anybody in DC. You understand the issues better than even almost on the state level. You guys are the ones who are going to come to us and say, hey, we see what we need here done, and we can do our best to maybe facilitate some issues and just provide some funding on that, but we're not going to be the ones changing anything for you. You're the ones who are going to have to make those stands. I really appreciated Mr. DeGarbo's words as just stating what he's been going through. I couldn't imagine, sir. I commend you for what you've done in coming up and speaking about what that issue is to everybody here. And just your statement, maybe we can't save the world, but we can save the village. And I think that's something to take to heart. I mean, me personally, this is where government is at, is within the people here in this room who care enough about the individual across from them to say, I want to help you. And that's the kind of government we want. We want it based on what the people are doing for one another, and that eventually builds up to where the congressional members meet today. So continue to reflect that. Continue to do what you are doing today, because that is great work. I want to be here as a resource. Please contact me. I'm excited to hear your questions and concerns. I'm very new, so that also accompanies a lot of inexperience, but please educate me. Please help me to help you, and just to inform the congressman what better resources we can provide, or just overall what we can do to help facilitate just a better working environment for you. But continue as you have to lead the way in this, because that is a very cool thing to see. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you more.
Thank you very much for that information. We saved the best for last. My friend from Mr. Senator Cory Gardner's office, Mrs. Kathy Garcia.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation of being here today. Really appreciate it. I have a special place in my heart for Trinidad. My parents were born here and were raised here. They got married here. And so it's got a special place in my heart, because we always visited Trinidad when I was young. Way back when, we won't say how long. But just briefly, I'd like to mention that the Senator Gardner is the 5th most bipartisan senator in the Senate today. He works across the aisle to get things done for Colorado. He has passed 5 legislative bills under the Obama administration, 3 under the Trump administration, which is more than the entire congressional delegation. He is considered the most effective member of the Colorado Senate. Now, the senator has 8 offices around the state. Pueblo covers 16 counties in southern Colorado. My job as regional director is to visit with communities, with local governments, organizations, and find out where we can assist on federal issues. Caseworkers like Nanette, you want to stand up, Nanette? She works on individual cases with constituents who are having problems with the VA, IRS, Social Security, and so on. Now, we do get a lot of calls from people who are having problems with state government or local issues with city government or county government. We do try to help guide them into the right department as to where they need to go. The senator is successful because of you. You are the constituents that provide input to our offices so that we can improve legislation he's working on or something he needs to introduce. This past year, the senator's accomplishments include the BLM office, Bureau of Land Management office in Grand Junction. As you know, 99% of public lands are west of the Mississippi, so why not have the office in West United States? Funding has been increased by 50% for the National Renewable Energy Lab, which is located in Golden. United Launch Alliance, which is headquartered in Centennial, is looked upon by NASA, and NASA has placed its confidence in United Launch Alliance to launch a critical science payload for our nation. So they'll be working on space. Land and Water Conservation Fund has been funded. Now the Senator is working very hard on getting that permanently funded so that we don't have to go back every year for appropriations. This fund will help fund our parks, our public lands, and help support our outdoor recreation economy. Payment in lieu of taxes has been fully funded for 2020, which is something a lot of our counties depend on. So we're happy it's going to be fully funded, and the Senator is still working on getting that permanently funded so that we're not guessing from year to year as to whether or not we're going to get funds for our counties. Despite the effort to limit states' ability to receive waivers through the American Affordable Care Act, Section 1332, the Senator led the Colorado delegation in supporting Colorado's application for a waiver, which was approved this past summer. The waiver lowered insurance premium costs by more than 20% across the state and about 34% on the western slope. Amachi, I'm sure you've heard about Amachi, which is near Grenada, the Japanese internment site during World War II. The Senator's legislation passed to do a feasibility study to take that site to a national park. This study is starting in a couple of weeks, which we're really happy about. And we know that John Hopper, who heads up the Amachi Preservation Society, has done a lot of work already, and we don't see any obstacles to getting that to a national park. So we're excited about that as well. Those are just a few of the accomplishments the Senator has garnered so far. And we are also concerned a lot about the opioid situation, the drug situation. The Senator has several pieces of legislation going on right now through the Congress on this issue, hopefully to help fund, to help track where where pharmaceutical companies are sending opioids and so forth. He also has the legislation on a suicide hotline. Instead of trying to find an 800 number that goes 800, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, he's submitted the legislation for a 988 hotline number. So that's being well received and hopefully will get passed within the next couple of weeks. He also has a VA readiness initiative that includes expanding access to services, encouraging innovation, VA accountability, and empowering transitioning service members. We have a lot of soldiers and service members coming out of the service, and we need help to get them back into society. As mentioned by Commissioner Felix Lopez, we are looking at getting VA providers here in Trinidad. We're hoping by the middle of January to make that announcement, or hopefully by the end of January to make that announcement, which will allow veterans to go and be visited by medical professionals here in Trinidad, and will also allow veterans from Raton to come over here and save them the trip from going to Albuquerque. The other pieces of legislation include mental health professionals, workforce shortage. We're going to see if we can increase the number of mental health professionals, student loan repayment, teachers leadership program, a rural broadband, rural health. We need more doctors in rural Colorado, and that's something that he has some legislation in regard. They are working on immigration reform. Too bad they didn't listen to the group of 8 that tried to pass immigration with Senator Bennett, Senator Gardner, and several other bipartisan senators way back in December of 2017. But anyway, those are just a few of the issues the Senator's working on, and I'll be more than happy to stay afterward if you have any specific issues or questions you want me to check on. Again, thank you very much for the invitation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Garcia. At this time, we're going to read the questions from here at the table. Panel, Mayor Rico, would you please start?
I guess you can hear there. A couple of questions came to me. Trinidad City, what is the city doing to remedy homelessness? The shelter, since Rico says nothing can be done. I just want to make one minor correction here. When it says nothing, when I've said that nothing cannot be done, I refer to that as not the homeless, but I was talking about the panhandlers in Trinidad that we have around. Panhandling, as I believe one of the presenters earlier said earlier, panhandlers are protected by the Constitution, so there's really nothing that can be done with the panhandlers. As far as homelessness goes, Council has had discussions on the homeless issue, and we have been very reluctant to provide any kind of service at this point in time to the homeless. I think the biggest reason is because we realize that the money that we have, we need to put toward other more beneficial items in the community, such as infrastructure, some of these other things that are going on that we to add to the economy, to the community. We know that homeless is a huge issue. How do we approach this? We've also felt that homeless is probably an issue that's going to be taken up more by the private sector rather than by the city of Trinidad itself, simply because of financial issues. Even though we do have a pretty good budget, our budget this year is a little over $47 million. But once you start breaking that all down, it starts cutting into it pretty quick. So that is the question as far as the homeless issue. Also have here, are there plans, and if so, what are they, to attract hemp manufacturers to the area? Job supply is here. We know that hemp is becoming a big issue, not issue. It's a possibility across the state of Colorado. We've been talking about this for the last several years. And now that a lot of the national and state regulations have changed, it allows us to be able to do additional work with the hemp industry. There are a few people, and there's one person in this room today who is very interested in the hemp industry. Moving forward, we will encourage anything that we possibly can, because that will provide additional economy to the community. So anything that we can support, we will try to do.
All right, two questions submitted here regarding broadband, and when is the county going to, in our region, receive broadband for our needs in the rural area? That is being worked on as we speak. Council of Governments, Walt Bolden, I think he was here, he might have left, is working on that along. Is he still here? Walt, would you like to address that? Would you like to come up and address that? I'm on his board, so I can do that.
Nothing like putting me on the spot. It's one of the areas that we are looking at for continuing funding, quite honestly. There are several different funding sources that are going on. Probably the most active is, I don't know how many of you have heard that we're doing a study on bicycle and pedestrian and safety on Highway 12 that will link Trinidad all the way to Walsenburg. But a component of that is looking at how do we also then work with CDOT to pair up on what they call smart highways, which would introduce broadband potentially along that road. So we're looking at trying to figure out as many creative ways as we can to connect broadband with other projects that have better chances of being funded rather than thinking of funding it separately. So that's probably the best answer I can give you at this point, is it is moving forward, but it is moving forward at a steady but slow pace.
Thank you both. Next question we have is for Representative Fox Office, Senator Gardner, 1 minute. The question is, the Trump administration stricter work requirements for SNAP recipients will worsen Trinidad's homeless problem. Will you work to scale back those requirements? Who would like to answer that?
I made mention to it briefly, but there will be a lot more looked into just what the final policy is on this. It won't just, I think you'll see a lot of change from what you see now to when it's actually implemented. But I do believe that we do want to encourage people to work. We don't want to continue generations of people who are dependent on food stamps or those kind of needs. We want them to be productive and be able to also help out within the community. So,
thank you. Another question we have is regarding BLM land, regarding $30 an acre, I believe. Lands to balance is up. They're asking if make it quality for livestock owners who have to lease private property at $30 an acre. $1.45 an acre on public land is, sorry, I can't read your writing, is wrong, and also no grandfathering for leases. Did I read that right?
No. Can I real quickly say the question? Okay, presently on BLM public lands, the ranchers who have the leases, and some of them have held them for generations, they only have to pay $1.47 per acre for 1 cow calf. Okay, you get like our county, we're in and out of drought all the time, and so when our ranchers locally have to lease on private property in areas of the county where the necessary grass resources are, they are paying $30 plus per acre to lease that land during the summer months. So when it comes market time, they basically, a lot of them lose money on their operations because it's costing so much for the lease, where the ones that have these leases on the BLM land, they're making 100% profit because they're only paying $1.45. And it's not just unfair to the private sector. It can be balanced by bringing the federal lease up to $30 an acre. It would also give BLM a lot more operational money. Right now, it's a giveaway.
Well, if I could, the thing about it, that this is a federal issue, but I'd like to answer the state.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is $1.95 per animal unit, and it's compared to $30 per acre. But the reality is, even at $1.95, the cattleman loses money. It may sound like a good deal. By the time you add, the travel time for that person from his home to check those cows, plus he has to keep up the fences, it's not a giveaway as you portrayed it. So the $30 an acre, I don't know where, there's no place in Los Animas County that I know of that animal unit is $30 per pair. I don't know of any.
You got some good friends.
Well, $30 an acre, normally Los Animas County is normally around 35 acres per animal unit. So you're talking about, it takes more than 1 acre per cow calf to operate in Los Animas County. But even though I understand your question, but I think, it's not a benefit to the farmer, but the reality is there's not enough private pasture ground around to satisfy the cattleman's needs. And at the animal unit price per head, even though it sounds low, is not. Because it takes a tremendous amount of financial money from that individual producer to maintain that land that BLM ground is there. So I understand what you're at. I know that it's very simple to say, well, the BLM land is so much cheaper than private, but the reality is it's not. That's a problem. And until you until you actually pasture on BLM land, you may not understand what I'm saying.
Well,
But
I think then
I would be opposed, as a state senator, I would be opposed for BLM to raise their rates to the cattlemen. Because I think we need that industry. That's an $8 billion industry in the state of Colorado. We should do everything we can to promote and protect that industry. Thank you.
Okay, then I'd suggest you guys talk to the ranchers. This input comes to me from the ranchers.
You just did talk. I am talking as a rancher.
Yeah, no, I said some of our local ranchers.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one more question here. That was Louise passed it on to me.
Yeah.
Pretty much this is for all of us, but I want to try to answer. It says the message that I've heard today all point to homelessness, substance abuse, mental health, the legal system, along with the lack of services, affordable housing, all major intersecting contributors to issues we see around the nation and right here. Are the elected officials willing to work with these experts and others to house people and address these issues? Like I mentioned earlier, the discussion that we've had today is a discussion, it's been a good, frank discussion, a discussion that we have to have, and it will need to be ongoing. So I want to thank everyone again for doing that. As far as I could speak for myself, and I'm sure I can probably speak for the elected officials within City Hall, and I'm sure with our county commissioners, we are all committed to try to do something about the opioid substance use. Homeless is a big issue that's very difficult to deal with, but I believe and I am willing to commit to try to help in any way that we possibly can. Myself, and I'm sure some of our elected officials are probably willing to do the same. So yes, we are committed to try to do something.
Thank you, Mayor. And the last question we have submitted is, does the county, at this time, the county does not support Noah's Ark and the Carnegie Library yet, but just about as many county residents as the city utilize those services. Is the county open to helping fund those entities? And yes, we are, but like I said earlier, we haven't had a raise for our staff in over 8 in some 10 years. To stabilize our workforce, we needed to keep that revolving door, shut that revolving door, and stabilize our staff and help our Department of Services, our sheriff's departments, and everybody on the board. But what we're looking at in the future is we have excess funding in 1B that passed a couple years ago, and we're probably going to have to come to the voters next year to ask you to keep the excess of that. During that time, if we decide to do that, I would propose, myself personally, this is not speaking on behalf of the board, but I would propose we earmark monies for all these nonprofits that you're discussing, and not just those two, but other ones in the community, including the Harry Sayer Center, and our Aguilar areas and up the river. So that will be down the pike next year, but we will need the voter support if we decide to go with that route and keep asking to keep that excess funding, which we're already paying anyway. So I'm doing a sales pitch, if you could tell, because we're probably going to do something like that down the road. Yes, and there's a lawsuit still pending, thank you, Mayor, from El Paso County regarding an excess funds. Douglas Bruce has a lawsuit hanging up there with the Sheriff's Department up there. So if that comes down the pike and it supersedes the court's rule on that, then we might not have to do that at all. We might be able to keep the money right now. And she's looking at me. She's looking at me. Be careful what you say. So I can't really go too much into more. I'm going to get chastised here in a bit. So anyway, so yes, we would like to help fund all these different organizations. And at this time, I'd like to call Commissioner Tony Hass up to the podium for our closing remarks.
This one's on, right, Victor? I would like to make two. I would like to make two just general observations. And what I've noticed, I think that everybody in this room wants to see this community prosper. And I think the phrase was coined at the Kaboom build where we talked about Team Los Animas County and everybody pulling their weight and coming together, and even the mayor was out there slinging concrete. I just want to applaud everybody in here that's here and engaged in this process, because if we don't engage, nothing's going to move forward. And I would like to thank Mr. DeGarbo for getting up here with his frank and honest dialogue that he had with us. That takes a lot of courage to talk about something that happened so personal. So with that, on behalf of Los Animas County, I would like to thank all of you for coming and participating. Special thanks to Pastor Andrea Doeden for our invocation. Thank you to Phil Dornkamp and Mike Valentine and Victor for pulling this thing together. You did a fantastic job. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you to our esteemed dignitaries and all of our participants for their insight into these mounting issues. Special thanks to Tom Murphy for filming this event. And it'll be available on YouTube, Trinidad Times, Channel 71. Correct, Tom? About when?
Later tonight. Takes a while for it to load.
Thank you, TSJC, for hosting this event. And this has been a really informative event. And we hope to see you all again in January for the next Los Animas County and Trinidad Legislative Roundtable. Thank you.